Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. As always, I am your host, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and today we are going to be discussing the Mecca Pact. This was a defense agreement pact that was signed in Mecca by Turkey, Saudi, and Pakistan. And this is big news that some commentators are claiming is really signaling a new direction for the Muslim world, for the Middle East. Finally, we're getting pan-Islamic unity. Finally, we're getting a move away from U.S. hegemony, U.S.-Israeli control, and the Muslims are finally coming together, uniting to create a bloc, a Muslim bloc that the Ummah has been calling for, especially in recent years because of Israeli aggression and expansion. So that's the optimistic view. And then there's also a pessimistic view of this agreement. There are people who are saying that, well, this is just the same old, same old. This is not representing a new geopolitical reality. In fact, it is the same underlying powers at work. The United States is manipulating its puppets to isolate Iran on behalf of U.S. and therefore Israeli interests. And we've seen these kinds of pacts and defensive agreements before, and they are ultimately not in the benefit of the Muslims. They actually serve the same old masters. And so this is the pessimistic perspective. And then there's a neutral perspective that says that Muslims, this kind of pact between Turkey, Saudi, and Pakistan is not going to amount to anything. It's a nothing burger. It's actually not going to isolate Iran. It's not going to help Muslims, etc. So these are the different perspectives that have been shared online. And I'm going to give an analysis. I'm going to give you some facts and figures to see where the truth actually lies. That's the point of the show today. Inshallah. I'm also planning to talk about the whole Charlie Kirk killing, the debate that happened with Candace Owens and Andrew Wilson. I had some comments on X, on social media, about that debate. And I made some comments recently, yesterday, about Charlie Kirk and the fact that he was a rabid anti-Muslim, anti-Islam Zionist promoting Israeli interests, and how satisfying it is now that his death is being used to attack Israel, to attack Zionism by Candace Owens and her supporters, and this entire coalition from the left wing and the right wing against Israel, and how Charlie Kirk's assassination and the conspiracy theories about it are being used to degrade Israel and to attack Zionism and Jewish influence in America. And so I posted that, and the Zionists started seething. And I had, the Nick guy that I debated several months ago commenting, oh, this is what a retarded take. And then you had Nick Fuentes, or, Pablo Fuentberg, whatever you want to call him, the Mexican Fed. He was also laughing at the tweet. And then you had Lucas Gage, the Nazi who's now discovered how amazing the Jewish people really are. He was also analyzing the tweet. So I want to comment on that. I want to talk about this larger political spectacle, Charlie Kirk's assassination and the conspiracy theories, and what we should make of the Andrew Wilson versus Candace Owens debate. Obviously, I think that Candace Owens destroyed Andrew Wilson, and I'll give you the reasons for that. Sneeko is in the chat saying, here, let me show what Sneeko is saying. How's it going, Sneeko? Our good brother Sneeko is in the chat. Assalamu alaikum salam. I heard you run the Muslim Brotherhood. How can I join, and when are the weekly meetings? I'm not CIA, by the way. Yeah, we are a big brotherhood, the big Muslim Brotherhood, and we're coming. We're coming. We're inevitable. That's something that will send you the newsletter, and you can you can sign up, Sneeko. Don't worry about it. Speaking of newsletter, subscribe to our newsletter. It is in the link below. You can subscribe, and we send out a weekly newsletter summarizing the content from MuslimSkeptic. So if you can't follow all our content, you can join the newsletter and get that in your inbox. And then we also don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and leave a super chat. I will read the super chats later in the show, inshallah. Or if there's anything relevant, I'll read it, inshallah. And the super chats help support us. Okay, guys. Sorry I missed last week. We didn't have a show last week. It's because I've been busy trying to finish this book. Alhamdulillah, I have good news. I finished the first draft of the book. It's 500 pages. And the 500 pages are pretty dense. A lot of material. So now I have to go through the editorial process. I have to clean it up. I have to clean up the references, the footnotes. I have to clean up maybe some of the prose. It needs some reshuffling in terms of organization. So I'm going to continue to work on the book. It's not completed. However, I'm going to be ramping up again, getting back to the old schedule of posting content, doing videos, and being more active, inshallah, on the channel. And so, and new stuff, like there's new stuff that we'll be getting into as well. So stay tuned for that, inshallah. Yeah, so I will be looking at the chat, so leave your comments as we go along. Okay, so the Mecca Defense Pact. Let's get into this because, again, there's three perspectives. You have a optimistic perspective that this is a great development. You have a pessimistic perspective, and you have a neutral perspective. I tend to be on the neutral to pessimistic side of things, and I'll give you my reasons for that. But part of the reason is that I'm just traumatized. I've been traumatized by decades, basically, of ineffectual nationalism, nationalistic leaders, and these governments that have, not really done much for the Muslim Ummah, other than a few exceptional cases, a few exceptional things that we might see from these countries every now and then. And especially since October 7th, we've been traumatized as an Ummah. Is it not the case? What we've seen to the Palestinians, and what did these countries do? What have these countries done? Pakistan, Saudi, Turkey, what was needed to be done wasn't done. And so now, after a genocide has been well underway, 600,000 at least Palestinians have been extinguished by the terror state. Now you're coming to create a pact. And we're supposed to be thrilled for this. We're supposed to be happy and optimistic about this. You don't really get that kind of optimism when you have that recent track record. We can't really give these leaders that kind of blanket check of support. That's the underlying background. If I'm honest with myself, that really colors my perspective on any of these types of agreements involving any of these countries. Any of these countries that weren't actively involved in resistance, weren't actively and militarily involved in resistance, whether by backing the Palestinian groups, supporting them, and suffering consequences from that. What you really see from these countries is that since October 7th and prior to that, they've been concerned about protecting themselves, protecting the interest, not even of the countries, not even the people within these countries, but really the power structure, the governments involved, protecting their interests in terms of these politicians in charge of these countries. And they have demonstrated repeatedly in this unceasing pattern to primarily be concerned with maintaining their own power. If that means striking a deal with the US, striking a deal with Israel, striking a deal to preserve themselves at the expense of even the Palestinians, at the expense of even their own people in many cases. So given that track record, why should we just have this type of optimism? about any agreement that they make, no matter how good it seems on paper. So that is, I'll be honest, that is coloring my perspective, and that's why I tend to be more pessimistic. And my attitude is like, show me something real. Show me a decision that you're gonna make. Any of these countries, show me a decision that you're going to make for the sake of Muslims outside of your borders, that you suffer some actual consequence, like you actually pay a price. There's actually a cost that you're willing to pay for taking that position. Show me that you're willing to do that, and then you're going to start gaining trust. You're going to start gaining trust from the ummah. And until you're able to do that, it's all rhetoric. It's all rhetoric. So a country like Iran, why I'm willing to give Iran the benefit of the doubt, or Yemen, for example, the benefit of the doubt, or, you know, the resistance in Lebanon, the benefit of the doubt. The reason I'm willing to do that is because they've suffered serious consequences. They have paid a price. And that just naturally shows a level of sincerity. It shows a level of that they are making sacrifices for other than themselves. Because, you know, all of these groups could sign a deal. Like, they could join the Abraham Accords tomorrow. They could join the Abraham Accords tomorrow. The bombing is going to stop. And in fact, Starbucks is going to start opening franchises. Okay, you're going to get all of this investment. You're going to get all of this infusion of foreign money. Sanctions will be lifted. So they could, if they were truly just in it for themselves, they could strike those deals at any time. But they don't. They don't. And I'm not saying that makes them saints, that makes them awliya and they can do no wrong, and we have to put all our trust in them forever and ever. That's not the kind of extremism, like the kind of dichotomy or binaries that I'm advocating here. But it's still evidence. It's still proof that, okay, they are willing to pay a cost, to pay a price and sacrifice whatever that might be. In the case of Iran, it's quite a high price that they've paid for decades for opposing Israel and opposing the United States. They paid an extremely high price in terms of economic sanctions, the assassination of their leaders, the sabotage of their infrastructure, their civilian infrastructure, sanctions, etc., etc. They've paid a very high price, whereas these other countries have not paid that price. Okay, so that track record matters. That track record matters in how we judge these countries or these governments and the decisions that they make, the agreements that they negotiate with each other. Okay, so that's the background. Now, what about the actual meat of this agreement? Like, what does it actually signal? What does it actually amount to? There's a lot of analysis that's been put online. A really great analysis and breakdown was produced by our very own Beria on MuslimSkeptic. He has an analysis of the Mecca Agreement. You can go on the homepage right now, MuslimSkeptic.com, and read that. It's a good read. It's a nice breakdown. He goes through all of the countries, and the main thing that he actually argues, Beria lays it out very nicely, is that these countries are, it's not so much about like backing each other so that if one country gets attacked, there's going to be like a hot war and Pakistan is going to jump in and Saudi's going to jump in and they're going to fight Israel, or they're going to fight Iran, or they're going to fight whoever. That's not what this agreement is about. It's first of all about deterrence. Okay, the threat, the potential that these countries can start backing each other up. So if Israel attacks Turkey, then potentially Saudi will get involved, Pakistan will get involved. Or if India attacks Pakistan, potentially Saudi and Turkey are going to get involved, etc. The potential is there. So that's the whole idea of deterrence, is to, okay, if you attack one of us, you're going to bite off more than you can chew. So think twice. Okay, that's there. But how likely is it, that Pakistan is going to start attacking Iran or start attacking Israel, for example? It's not very likely. It's not very likely. So, and that shouldn't be the expectation. However, if you look at it from the perspective of the military industrial complex of these countries, then it makes a lot of sense for these countries to come together because they complement each other so very well. And this is what Beria argues, and he lays it out very nicely. And he says that if you look at Saudi, they have the finances, okay? They have sovereign wealth. They have all of, basically $1 trillion that they've accumulated in wealth from oil. And so they have the financing. They have a lot of money that they can throw around. Other countries are more cash strapped and their economies are more vulnerable, including Turkey and Pakistan. Okay? So that's point number one. Saudi has finances, but they lack two things. They lack a kind of military industrial capacity. They don't have the homegrown capabilities to build drones, to build missiles. They don't have the demographic capability to support that kind of industry. They haven't produced that. They don't even have necessarily the expertise. Like, they don't have the intellectual capital to produce that. And that's why they're so reliant on just buying everything that they need. They buy their jets, they buy their missiles, they buy their drones. And this is a dependence that they have. Now, that's the kind of need that Saudi has. The need that Turkey has, as I mentioned, is financial, mainly financial in nature. But Turkey has the military infrastructure. They have the capability. They have, a very advanced drone production capabilities. And they're actually supplying Ukraine with drones. They're actually supplying NATO with drones. They are a military producer. They're also getting increasingly involved in developing ballistic missiles and hypersonic missiles. And even autonomous jets, military jets. So Turkey has the kind of military industrial infrastructure, and they just have problems with their currency. The Turkish lira is relatively weak. They can use cash infusion from Saudi Arabia. So then what does Pakistan contribute? Pakistan is obviously a nuclear state. They have nuclear weapons. And they also have the demographics. When they have one of the largest militaries in the Muslim world, their overall population is about 225 million people. Saudi is only about 37 million people. And so Pakistan has a lot of personnel. They have a lot of demographics to sustain, any kind of military production and potentially troops that can be deployed. So they have a demographic resource that Saudi Arabia, for example, doesn't have, and Turkey doesn't have, in the sense that they're not as willing to deploy military maybe to far away from their own borders, whereas Pakistan might have more willingness to do that. And Saudi just doesn't have the manpower. They just don't have the people. And so the other perspective is that, so these countries are going to complement each other in creating this kind of military industrial bloc. And they're just they won't have the same need to reinvent the wheel because they're sharing resources. So the kind of weapons that Turkey is developing using Saudi financing, they're going to share with Saudi. They're going to share with Pakistan. Pakistan will independently have to develop these kinds of weapons in order to maintain deterrence, for example, against India. They won't have to rely just on China, for example, or the US. And so Pakistan will be able to rely on these other partners, and Saudi will be able to rely on these other partners, and Turkey will be able to rely on these other partners within this defensive pact. Rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, 3 countries with the independent weapons program trying to independently create a security umbrella, now that the US security umbrella has been so deteriorated by this war in Iran, they don't have to go it alone, basically, and they can supplement any of the weaknesses that they have with these other countries. So this is a very optimistic view. Okay, these countries are becoming more enmeshed with each other, economically, militarily. I agree. I agree that anything where the Muslims are more dependent on each other as opposed to being dependent on the U.S., that is a win. That is a good thing, and you can say that almost unqualifiedly. And so I'm optimistic in that sense. And the fact of the matter is that the U.S. security umbrella that the U.S. offered to these countries has been deteriorated. It has been shown to be a joke. Iran has basically destroyed that mirage or that illusion that the U.S. is able to actually protect these countries from hostile forces, whether it's from Iran because of what Iran is doing to the Gulf, or because of what Israel is able to do, or Israel's aggression and belligerence that the U.S. has not been able to rein in. So either way, this idea of U.S. security provided by, U.S. qualitative military edge over others, like that illusion has been completely debunked over the past 6 months, okay, since the start of the Iran war. So the optimistic view is that, okay, these countries, realizing that the U.S. can't protect them anymore, are now turning to each other to provide, a independent security agreement and be able to defend themselves against Israel and the United States. I think that's way too optimistic. I think that is way too optimistic. Why? For a very simple reason. And a lot of the analyses that I see, they seem to miss this point, that when it comes to these countries operating, they are not independent actors, unfortunately. And this is something that is well known, it's well understood, and this is something that was basically revealed in many ways, but most spectacularly with the Epstein files. What the underlying moral lesson of the Epstein files is that governments can be infiltrated by foreign powers through blackmail, through bribes, through financial incentives, through all kinds of methods to keep a country under control. The most powerful country in the world, presumably the United States, is able to be compromised spectacularly by, spies, by someone like Epstein. Okay, you think that only happens in the US? And if we look at the behavior of these Muslim countries and the fact that they make decisions that don't seem to benefit the people of those countries, they seem to benefit foreign powers and foreign countries, namely the West, namely the US, namely the EU, namely Israel. That's a strong indication that these countries are also compromised in some way, that they're not truly independent. Even if they were independent, and somehow they'd still be corrupt oftentimes. But it's not just corruption. It's corruption and a foreign power control, foreign influence, blackmail, bribes, corruption. That, unfortunately, is the reality with these Muslim countries, especially Saudi Arabia, which is the centerpiece of this entire agreement. It's a central country in this entire agreement. And that what does that mean is that, okay, if these countries are not acting independently, then how meaningful is a security bloc involving these countries really going to be? Like, are they making a security agreement because the U.S. has given them the permission to make this security agreement? And Trump actually came out and congratulated these countries. And here's the tweet. very happy to see Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan have recently and finally signed the Mecca Joint Defense Agreement. It shows how the Middle East is coming together and how countries will finally be able to defend themselves in a more meaningful way. Congratulations to the great leadership of the three nations mentioned. This is a big, bold, and important first step. Wow. Okay, so is this just a facade? Like, is Donald Trump just pretending like he's happy? Like, is he just happy? Like, oh, countries are now forming agreements to make themselves more independent of the United States, and Donald Trump is thrilled about this? The most Zionist president in history is thrilled about this security pact? So I don't think it's a facade. I think that the idea here, okay, what Donald Trump is expressing with this post, the idea behind it, like he's saying, look, they will be able to defend themselves in a more meaningful way. Okay, defend themselves from whom? Who would they be defending themselves from? You think Donald Trump is happy if they're defending themselves from Israel? The most Zionist president is happy about that? No. He is talking about just maintaining the kind of status quo that has existed for decades, okay, where Israel is protected, Israel continues to exist and continues to expand its territory and eventually eliminate the Palestinians. The U.S. continues to enjoy its privileged economic and diplomatic and military position. And these countries, you know, they enjoy their status quo. They enjoy to remain in power. And that perpetuates, you know, that state of affairs just perpetuates. And that is what Trump is interested in. That's what the deep state of America is interested in. And according to Donald Trump, this defense pact is advancing that goal. In fact, he's saying this is the important first step. So the underlying deep state perspective of the United States is that, you know, we're getting trounced by Iran and it's increasingly economically not feasible to prop up these countries in the Middle East. They need to take on some of their own security burden. They need to finance themselves. And the U.S. has to be less, paying less of that cost. The U.S. is still going to be in control. The U.S. is still going to be the puppet master, but we just need less of the cost. We economically cannot sustain propping up these countries. And we have all these military bases, okay? Here, U.S. military presence in the Middle East. Like, you can see there's a couple in Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi, UAE, Oman. Okay, all of these military bases, like, these cannot be sustained, especially since many of them, 18 of them in the Gulf have been destroyed by Iran. And the Pentagon just made an announcement that they don't even have plans to rebuild. They don't have plans because, what's the point of rebuilding something that Iran can just go ahead and destroy again? Like, they can't rebuild it. They don't have the resources to rebuild these bases. And it just becomes like strategically pointless because they can't be protected. They can't be defended. So this is the U.S., okay, saying that we're going to have less of a footprint. We're going to have less of a presence in the Middle East, but we can tolerate that because we still have the same kind of control over these powers, over these governments. That's why it's tolerable. That's why Donald Trump can celebrate, or he can make such a unqualified supportive statement like this. Like, this is a great step. This is so important. First step. Okay. And it's the same logic that Trump had for Ukraine. What has Trump been saying about Ukraine? That, well, this fight with Russia, the burden of that economically and militarily needs to be shouldered by the EU, not by the US. The EU and the rest of NATO is not pulling its weight. It's not pulling its weight in this war with Russia. to keep Russia in check, we need the US just doesn't have the capabilities financially to continue backing the Ukraine. Why isn't the EU and the rest of NATO pulling its weight? It's the same logic with the Middle East. Why aren't these partners pulling more of their weight, providing more of, sharing more of that defensive burden? That's the perspective of Trump, but he just doesn't believe that there's actually independence that's being generated by these countries collaborating with each other and agreeing to a defensive agreement with each other. Why wouldn't Trump think that? Like, why wouldn't Trump think and express that, this, or be neutral, like, actually, this is not good for U.S. interests. It's not good for Israeli interests. It's not good for our greatest ally in the Middle East that these countries are getting together. Now he says it's a great, bold, important step. Okay, and the reason I'm explaining the reason for that is that there's an assumption that they're still going to be calling the shots, that these countries are not suddenly discovering that they have a backbone and are going to start opposing U.S. interests. That seems to be what's signaled by this post. And I mean, it's more plausible. Like, it's more plausible again. Like, if you have this perspective of the Middle East and these countries that they don't have independence, that over all these years they have been subject to US control or like overwhelming influence, then why would that change overnight? How could that change overnight? That's the question. How could it change overnight? And so that's why I think people are a little bit too optimistic. Maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years, after the US has suffered a catastrophic economic collapse, which seems to be starting, there seems to be like a big inflationary crisis that is developing. Maybe in 5 years after that collapse happens, then these countries can meaningfully start acting independently and loosening the grip, the iron grip that the U.S. has on these governments. But it's not happening now. How could it happen now overnight? It just doesn't seem very realistic. It doesn't sound very plausible to me. And that's why I have to tend to be more on the pessimistic side. Like, worst case, this is just, as Trump seems to be indicating, like, this is a move to isolate Iran. And that's like the worst case that I think is maybe likely. Or it's like a nothing burger and, it doesn't really mean anything. Ultimately, like, these countries aren't suddenly, there hasn't been like a pan-Islamist bug that they've caught and they're now starting to collaborate with each other to advance the interests of Muslims. Like, that'd be great, but how likely is it that that has actually taken place? Of course, they themselves, like these countries, you have their foreign ministries that have been on a blitz, like putting out material to present this agreement as a huge victory for the Muslims. And they've said, like, the foreign ministry in Turkey and also in Pakistan, they've said, like, this is just a first step, that we want to include other Muslim countries as well. Like, we want to bring in Egypt, for example. Maybe Qatar is going to join. And they've signaled that they want to expand this. And they are trying very hard to manage people's perception that this is a pact that is going to oppose the influence of the West and the Zionist influence in the Middle East. Like, they're very concerned about signaling that. And, I'm just not as convinced. I'm not as convinced that that is ultimately what is going on here. And, the truth is, it was just a few weeks ago that Pakistan was asking the U.S. for $10 billion, asking for a $10 billion credit line from the U.S. to prop up their economy. Okay, so Pakistan needs money. Pakistan is facing its own economic problems. So hard to imagine that $10 billion would be given to Pakistan without strings attached. And earlier this summer, Donald Trump was in Turkey meeting with Erdogan, meeting in Istanbul or Ankara. And what was really agreed to there with Trump? So, I mean, it's, yeah, like I said, it's hard to believe that suddenly these countries are playing hardball with the US while begging for economic infusion and credit lines. Like they're going to play hardball and, you know, be independent and rely on each other and not have this kind of dependency or these contingencies with the US and the US's geostrategic interests and those that are enmeshed with the Zionists and Israel. So I'm, like I said, like the pessimism is looking at not only the facts of this defense agreement, but also looking at the history of these specific governments, how they've behaved, and, you know, the kind of trauma that we've experienced as an ummah from these governments. So what else? Let me just check my notes. See if I forgot anything. Another point, again, it falls more on the pessimistic side, that, you know, these countries see what Iran has been able to do, and they're worried about what Iran could be in 5 years and 10 years. You know, Iran has been, for decades, for 47 years, it's been throttled by sanctions. And these countries have participated in those sanctions. These countries have been participating as, you know, vassal states of the U.S. They've been participating in the sanctions against Iran. And so what happens in 5 years, as Iran has demonstrated that it can defeat the U.S. in a hot conflict, in a hot war, it can withstand this kind of carpet bombing, assassination of its leadership, decapitation of its leadership. It can survive and come out on top. And maybe the sanctions are going to go away, or they're going to become even less effective. What is going to be the future of Iran? Is Iran going to be a hostile state? And even if it's not hostile, like, it's going to be, you know, this new center of power in the Middle East. And what does that mean for our countries and for our power? And people will say, you know, in discussing this with some others, people will say that, well, Turkey doesn't really have any worry about fighting with Iran, and Pakistan doesn't have any concern with Iran. Pakistan is concerned with India. Turkey is concerned with Israel. Like, this is, yeah, Saudi is concerned because Iran has actually struck Saudi. But these other partners aren't concerned about Iran. So why would they want to isolate Iran? They don't have that same kind of concern. Like, Iran is not a threat for them. Yeah, today Iran is not a threat. Today Iran is not a threat for these countries. But what happens in 5 years? So these countries are looking ahead, and they're realizing that if the US doesn't have like a qualitative edge in terms of military strength over Iran, do we? If the US, okay, the nuclear powered United States superpower, is being outsmarted technologically, okay, with the kind of weapons that Iran has developed, its hypersonic missiles, its drones, its underground bases. If the US can't handle that, we're not going to be able to handle that. Even if, you know, Pakistan has its nuclear weapons and Turkey has its drones, like, we're not going to be able to match that. So this could potentially be a threat. And there's a race, like there is an arms race, and how are we going to compete? And we don't necessarily have the human capital to be able to compete. So look at this chart. the percentage of total graduates in STEM fields. Okay, so out of all the graduates in a country, the percentage that are in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and medicine. Okay, science-based fields. I think M is for medicine. So China, 40%, 41%. It's leading. Russia, next. Then Germany. Then Iran. Okay, and then India. That's a big concern for Pakistan. Like, on both sides, Iran on one side, India on the other side, are outmatching, like majorly outmatching in terms of human capital with its graduates. France, Mexico, US, only 20%, okay? Too many of the US graduates are going into the humanities. There's like a big deficit. Indonesia, other than Iran, Indonesia is the only other country, okay, that is in the top 10. So if there is an arms race, okay, between Iran and these other regional actors, these other actors are losing big time. So they need to pool their resources. They need to pool their resources, and this is something that is going to become increasingly relevant, okay, as the US loses its kind of grip and its ability to project power into the Middle East. That kind of, what's going to fill that power vacuum? Like, this is the way that they're thinking. What is going to fill the power vacuum? Okay, insofar as the US has been defeated by Iran, these bases have been degraded or completely destroyed. There's a power vacuum that is arising in the Middle East. Who is going to fill that? And these countries want to fill it. Okay, but how can we do that? We can't do it alone. Iran has too much of a head start. And that head start is only going to get exponentially worse as these sanctions start becoming less and less effective against Iran. Like, imagine if, now Turkey has a bigger economy than Iran. Okay, we can look at that comparison. Look at this chart. Okay, here is the US in terms of its estimated GDP. Okay, 32 trillion is the US at the top. 0.61 trillion is Israel. Turkey estimated at 4 trillion. Okay, it's significant. It's 1/8 of the US. Pakistan 2 trillion, Iran at 1.7 trillion. Okay, so it's significantly less, according to these numbers, than Turkey. Okay, Saudi's at 2.8. So what if, after the dust has settled and the US gives up finally in terms of attacking Iran, which seems inevitable because of what Iran has been able to demonstrate in terms of its control of the Strait of Hormuz, withstanding the salvo, the attack from the US over 40 days and coming out standing. It seems like these economic sanctions are becoming increasingly meaningless, and Iran is going to have an economic boost. Actually, their stock market had like historic highs recently. So then this is very worrying. This is worrying because it means that Iran is going to fill in this vacuum that has been left by the United States. And they're concerned about that. Not necessarily for sectarian reasons, by the way. You think that these countries care about, we want to be Sunni. Like, we care about Sunni Islam so much, and we don't want Shiism to spread. Like, that's not their concern. They're concerned about their own power as these governments, as these regimes. So so I think that is a serious part of this entire equation, is what is Iran projected to become. And economic power follows military power, or is downstream. Economic growth is downstream of security dominance or power projection militarily. So Iran is set to actually expand its economy quite a bit. And that increased capital is going to be spent on increasing its military capabilities. And so this is what Israel has been trying to avoid, trying to prevent, and it's just failed. It's failed. The U.S. wasn't able to take them out, wasn't able to take out the Islamic Republic. Also, the other factor is, like, in terms of Iran's growth, is that Iran is an Islamic Republic. Okay, Iran is Islamist. This is a threat to some of these countries in the Middle East. It's a clear threat to Saudi. In the same way that Saudi was originally threatened by the 1979 Iranian Islamic Revolution, with Khomeini coming into power, that threatened the Saudi monarchy. And it's threatening any kind of secularized government. It's threatening any type of government, like with Saudi in particular, because they're trying, Vision 2030, they're trying to secularize. They're trying to modernize and move away from Islam as a national identity. So Iran just ideologically threatens Saudi Arabia, obviously, beyond just militarily. But Pakistan also is not interested in Islamism, or Islamism coming into power, or Islamism having more and more ideological weight. And with Turkey, it's a very delicate, balanced situation. Like, Erdogan is very careful, like, and you can see this within the political class in Turkey itself, is that they're very wary about Islamism, even though you could say, okay, the AKP, like, they're the religious party, okay, fine, but they're very sensitive because of the counterweight of the Kemalists and the potential for another coup, the potential for the Turkish population actually rising up and throwing them out of power and throwing them in jail and executing them, actually. So it's very, like, with the AKP and the religious elite within Turkey, like, they keep a hands on arm's length distance from hardcore Islamism, or Iranian style Islamism, or even Muslim Brotherhood type Islamism. Like, it's under the table. Yeah, we are ultimately an Islamic party. Like, we want women to be able to wear hijab. Like, we're going to fund the masajid. Like, but that really, like, was dampened by the 2016 coup, okay, against Erdogan. Like, they realized that, okay, this is a very sensitive situation. Like, the secularists in the country, like, they have the ability to topple us and destroy us. So we have to walk this fine line. We have to make deals. We have to not overstep these boundaries that the secularists have set. The secularists have the foreign backing as well, okay, from Israel and the West. So let's just, it's like this unsteady, balancing act. And if Islamism becomes more powerful from Iran, that is potentially destabilizing for Turkey as well. It's destabilizing for Pakistan. It's destabilizing for all of these Middle Eastern countries that have basically made a deal with secularism ideologically. They've made a deal. They've agreed to modernize. They've agreed to keep Islamism in check, keep Islamism, on the back foot. So that's that's like what Saudi's been doing for sure with Vision 2030, putting any kind of activist or scholar that preaches Sharia or Islamic unity, putting them in prison, right? And that's who Turkey and Pakistan are allying with. That's the regime that they're allying with. So there's going to be, like, influence, like, there's going to be that kind of ideological influence on those countries as well. And they're not very happy about a resurgent Iran, like a resurgent Islamist Iran. Like, that is ideologically threatening as well. So these are reasons why we should be, I think, more pessimistic, like, on the more pessimistic side. I'm not going to make, like, a final determination because it's yet to be seen. Like, these are things that are developing. It's like a very dynamic situation. I'm not going to condemn these countries. Like, I'm not going to condemn at least Turkey. I'm not going to condemn Pakistan and say that, no, this is just a Zionist ploy. Like, I'm not going to go that far. But I'm just less optimistic about what this agreement actually amounts to in service of the Ummah, in service of the Muslims. That's my only point. And so we have to, and like that kind of attitude, like that kind of caution, has served me well. Has served me well because, again, it's pattern recognition. It's a long history of trauma that we've had with these types of agreements. And yeah, I mean, that's my perspective. Look at like Syria, look at Goilani, like with Goilani as well. I wasn't going to say that, okay, Goilani, I know for sure that he is a plant, like he is a Zionist plant. I don't know that for sure, but there are all these signs, there are all these indications that make me pessimistic, make me skeptical. Like, I'm not one of these LARPers, one of these tards that are going to say, oh, the Blessed Revolution, oh, he's going to go and he's going to crush Israel now. Like, finally, we have Sunni representation. Like, I'm not going to say that because all the indications show that he's not that. And this HTS is not about that. All the indications are there. I presented the proof of that, the evidence. But like an overall posture of skepticism, like if you're gambling, okay, if you're making bets, like that's the kind of bet that you would make, all else considered, because of the pattern, because of the patterns that have been established in Middle Eastern politics, in the politics of these Muslim countries and the governments that are in control. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so that was my analysis for the Mecca Agreement, or Mecca Pact. Go read Beria's analysis if you want more in-depth insights. He also talks about the India factor, and Pakistan's concern with India and why it wants to ally with the Gulf as a counterweight to India, the security threat of India. So you can go and read more about that prong of the issue. Okay, so what do you guys think? Give me your perspective. Now I'm going to just pause and read your super chats. Before we go into the second half of the show. The second half of the show is going to be about the Tyler Robinson case, the killing of Charlie Kirk, the Candace Owens, Andrew Wilson debate, the comments I made on that, and the meltdown from some of the Zionists and feds. Lord Meisland, how's it going, bro? Opinions on China, the great yellow hope of man. Yeah, China is... Like, what do you mean? My opinion on Chinese food? My opinion on Chinese culture? Or my opinion on China when it comes to their involvement in Muslim countries? China should just be seen as like this counterweight to the West, like a counterweight to the West and to Israel. And as much as Muslim countries can use that to hedge against the monopoly that the U.S. has tried to establish, economically, militarily, diplomatically, it's a good thing. It's a good option for Muslims to have. Now, does that mean that China has the best interests of Muslims at heart? Of course not. Of course they don't. They have their own ethnic interests at heart and their own plans for Asia and their own plans for the Middle East and Africa. But their influence is not as caustic and cancerous as the Western influence, because when the West influences Muslim countries, they're not satisfied with just like economic control. They're not satisfied with just having that kind of power projection in your country, they also want to culturally engineer you. They want you to start being feminist, to start like practicing homosexuality. They want you to start cursing your religion, like cursing God. Like that's what the US wants. Like ideologically, they want to see transformation, and they see that as an important part of managing Muslim people and people around the world. This is what the international rules-based order is about. The international rules-based order in large part is about instituting human rights, and human rights just means like the liberal program, the liberal secular project as an ideology. That's what needs to be established globally in order to serve your economic, military, and diplomatic interests as the West. So it goes hand in hand. China doesn't have that same kind of perspective. They're not saying that, okay, we need to have like Confucianism be adopted by the Muslims. Like the Muslims need to start, revering Confucius, and they need to start like, they don't have that perspective. And so they're less like when they're involved in some of these Muslim countries, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Iran, for example, or Sudan, they're not trying to make you gay. They're not trying to turn your women into feminists, to start having abortions and to start working, in the corporate world. Like that's not their goal. They don't have a cultural engineering project, whereas the U.S. has, and that's been so disastrous. That's been such a damaging part of the U.S. hegemony and control over the Muslim world. So yeah, that's my thoughts on China. Sorry. Sneeko again. Did you see the cockroach from Mexico? Yeah, I saw that. It's quite disgusting, actually. Like the nerve of this guy to accuse everyone of being low IQ, third world, snubbing his nose. This is referring to Nick Fuentes, okay? And there was just on the live stream like roaches crawling over him. Like it's really viscerally disgusting. So he lives in filth. He lives in filth. Like what is this pattern of these right-wing anti-Muslim commentators, streamers who live in these roach-infested apartments? It's quite nasty because it's like Nick Fuentes and Asmongold is the other one. Asmongold, like someone who I don't know. Like, how is this person so popular? Like, what does he offer? I don't even know. Like, what is like? Was he streaming like gameplay? Like he's playing video games? Like, is that his claim to fame? Like, how did? Because he knows nothing about politics, and he doesn't have to have like a history of like political analysis or debate or any kind of redeeming quality. He's repulsive to look at. He's like living in filth and there are roaches crawling all over him. Like, how do you get that kind of following, actually? Like, this is why it's so depressing to live in modern world. Like, these are the people that become famous and they influence the opinions of many while they're, complete degenerates. So yeah, I saw that. It's nasty. Add Sneeko for 5 minutes. Where's Sneeko? Is he still in the chat? If Sneeko wants to join, I'll invite him. I didn't see any message from him though. I'll message him. Yeah, Sneeko doing a lot of good commentary as well, holding these people accountable. Let's see. Oh, Sneeko says he's just started his own stream, so can't make it. Jermungunder says shout out to Khabib, Hazmat, Hamzat, and Islam for their silence on the UAE funding the RSF. Happy retirement, guys. Hamzat has been silent, I guess. Khabib has also been silent. I haven't followed that. Abdul says, talk about how Abdul was a Freemason. El Salafis. Yeah, I guess there was a history. Like, you don't to discredit Muhammad Abdul, you don't need to like go into him being into Freemasonry. Yeah, I'm sure that's true. Like, he was highly influenced by the European elites, and he was in France. So before he returned back to Egypt. But like, just look at what he's proposing, like in terms of reforming Islam, reforming the Sharia. Like, you can discredit him just based on that. D. Jang Goodman says, Salam alaikum, wa alaikum salam. What a treat for me tonight. Just took my Shahada on Zafina Society Live, and now I can watch my other favorite brother Daniel, whose work has been highly influential on my journey. Well, mashallah, mabruk, glad to hear it. My brother, you took your Shahada. It's very exciting. May Allah protect you and increase you. And very good to hear. And thank you for your super chat, bro. Allah bless you. Okay, so any comments on the Mecca Pact before we move on? The other super chats, I will read them, but they're not really on the Mecca Pact right now. So I'll just wait till the end of the show to read them. Okay. Yeah, I'll read some of these later. I mean, what do you guys think? You guys think that this pact is, do you have an optimistic view, pessimistic? Don't know. No strong opinion either way. Fandom says, can you comment on Egypt and Qatar as part of the Beria analysis and your own thoughts about Egypt's reluctance to join? I don't think Egypt was reluctant to join. I think the other countries were reluctant to add Egypt, but they've been open to it. Like, they're open to adding Egypt. And they've had agreements before. Like, they've had like these four countries specifically, Saudi, Turkey, Pakistan, and Egypt, have had these kinds of agreements, diplomatic agreements before. So it's likely that they will add Egypt, actually. Qatar, I don't know. Yeah. If this pact was serious, they'd include the Muslim country currently winning the war. Yeah, I mean, this is... And the kind of optimistic perspective on that is that, okay, they didn't add Iran because it's not feasible for some reason to add Iran at this time, but like, that doesn't mean that they're trying to be hostile towards Iran. That's what they themselves say. Like, this is what the Turkish foreign minister is saying. This is what the Saudi foreign ministry is saying. Like, this is not we're not trying to be sectarian. We're not trying to isolate Iran. We are, we're not taking a side, basically, against Iran. But yeah, that's just rhetoric. Muslim Boogeyman says this is a nothing burger pact. Pakistan Army, Rating Tomb says Pakistan Army is bought out and corrupted by the CIA. Saar Tahir says, optimistic because Turkey society won't do anything, in my opinion, so they wouldn't just invade Iran. Pakistan, I don't know. President of Iran and foreign minister also praised the pact. Yeah, they I guess Araqchi had some positive things to say about the pact as well. They don't sign a pact for Palestine. Yeah, I mean that's the elephant in the room. Ragnar says they need to add Muslim countries who own strategic water paths as long as they're not in Abraham Accords already. Yeah, so I mean that they have Saudi has the Persian Gulf on one side, has the Red Sea on the other side, access to the Suez. Turkey obviously is in the Bosphorus, connected to Black Sea and the Mediterranean, and then you have Pakistan, who has connection to the Indian Ocean. So what I mean, Egypt. That's why Egypt would be important. Egypt has connection to the Mediterranean, control over the Suez. But like, how independent really is Egypt anyway? Hossein says Pakistan will never go against Iran, as a destabilized Iran will destabilize Pakistan. Yeah, I think that is correct. I don't think Pakistan wants to have any kind of hot conflict with Iran. And they don't want to see, they don't want to see the US destroy Iran either. Do you think more Muslim countries, Islamic countries will join as time goes by? We'll see. I mean, this is what that will kind of give more of an indication of what this pact is really about. I think the biggest positive sign is if they add Qatar. If they add Qatar, then I'll be a little bit more optimistic about the prospects of this pact. Okay, so let's go to the second half of the show, since we've been talking for an hour. I want to talk about this Candace Owens Andrew Wilson debate. And if you saw it, I don't know how useful it is to watch it at this point. I watched most of it live, and it was amusing. It was an amusing debate, just to see how badly Andrew Wilson floundered. And it was a disaster for Andrew Wilson. And it was like shockingly so. Like, it was a shockingly bad performance from Andrew Wilson. And the way that Andrew Wilson operates, and how he's been able to like wedge himself into a kind of a national conversation, even though he's a person of very little redeeming qualities and very little talent, he's been able to wedge himself because he has some kind of large following. Okay, he's developed this kind of network of mainly Christians. It slightly overlaps with Red Pill, And I don't understand, but these are like diehard Christians that support him no matter what. Okay, he's been able, so kudos to him for being able to cultivate that kind of audience, and he wields it to his advantage, and this makes it seem that he has a lot of influence when it's really like this particular group, but it like shows up like through social media metrics, and he's able, and I don't know if he's being propped up. Okay, he's appearing on Joe Rogan. He's being called by Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk's organization, over the past couple of months to do training, debate training for them. So he's someone who has been able to leverage his following into these bigger and bigger engagements, and so that has given people the impression, like maybe people who are more naive, that he is actually more skilled and more capable and more knowledgeable than he actually is. The guy's an idiot. The guy is an idiot, and Candace Owens was able to demonstrate that very thoroughly, actually, in this 3-hour debate that they had, moderated by Patrick Bet-David, by the way. Okay, and so this, so the setup is that you have Candace Owens sitting on this chair, this kind of reclining chair or whatever, like a big comfy chair, and then Andrew Wilson on the other side, and they're facing each other, and then in the middle is Patrick Bet-David, the moderator. Okay, and all he really contributes, Patrick Bet-David, is to say, you know, when there's a commercial break, like, let's pause for commercial. That's basically was his only role as moderator. And that also shows what an idiot he is, because there's a lot of need for moderation in this debate, as I'll explain. And they're just having this conversation, okay? They're yapping at each other. They're going back and forth. And Candace was dominating Andrew Wilson in this debate. And I'll explain the reasons why. But the primary reason that Candace is dominating is that Andrew Wilson set up such a huge expectation that he is going to humiliate Candace Owens, that he is going to show overwhelming evidence for why Tyler Robinson clearly was the killer of Charlie Kirk in Utah last year, almost 1 year ago. And here's $300,000. So when you offer $300,000 to debate someone, the underlying assumption is that you are going to humiliate them, that you have an argument or some evidence or a video clip that is going to be so devastating to Candace Owens that you are willing to pay $300,000, almost $500,000, to have the opportunity to do that. To have the opportunity on the biggest platform to humiliate Candace Owens. That's the assumption. And that's what people were expecting. People were expecting, because otherwise, Candace Owens, like the whole premise that Andrew Wilson was going with this whole time, he appeared on Joe Rogan, did the Joe Rogan podcast, talked smack about Candace Owens, said that, oh, well, it's overwhelmingly clear. The evidence is so clear that Tyler Robinson was actually the killer of Charlie Kirk. And Candace Owens is too scared to actually face serious scrutiny of her views. She is scared to actually be confronted with this overwhelming evidence because Candace Owens is a grifter. Candace Owens is a shameless grifter who is only pretending like there's holes in the narrative. She's only pretending because this is a grift. She's able to monetize this. And for 1 year, basically, she has been monetizing the Tyler Robinson case. And all of her episodes are about this because she's just milking it for views. She's milking it for social media engagement, which is very lucrative for her. So she's a grifter. And she's going to avoid talking to me and debating me or any kind of credible critic of hers, because she knows that the grift will be over on site. The grift will be over because I will go on her platform, I will show the overwhelming evidence and explain it, and that'll be the end of the grift. That'll be the end of the grift. So she cannot afford to have me on, to talk to me directly, to debate me. She can't afford it. And I'll prove that she can't afford that. She's too scared because she's a grifter. I'm going to offer her this money. I'm going to put these kinds of stakes, 300,000. And she won't accept it. She won't accept it because she's making more money off of the grift. That was the whole premise. Like, that was the whole narrative that Andrew Wilson was pushing out, beating his chest as a macho man. And what was funny is that Candace Owens accepted. Candace Owens said, sure, I'll take your 300,000. No problem. I'll take that big fat check. No problem. Come on to my show. Come on to my platform and we will have a debate. And then immediately, Andrew Wilson starts backtracking. Immediately, Andrew Wilson starts like, oh, no, blah, blah, blah. And trying to qualify. Oh, we have to have this. No, we have to have that. Conditions like that he is setting up. So immediately, it's like, it's a huge aura loss. It's a huge loss in your bravado. Okay, you were so confident. Now, all of a sudden, little Miss Candace Owens, who's, by the way, 7 months pregnant, is, stepping up to your challenge. And now you have all these conditions that you want to add. And then it turns out he doesn't even have the $300,000. He started fundraising for it, which is another huge embarrassment. Like, how are you challenging people with money that you don't have? And now you're like, because wasn't Candace the grifter? I thought Candace was the grifter. You're just fundraising for a debate that you shoehorn. Like, the whole force of your debate challenge was the money that you were offering. The money that you're offering. Like, anyone can do that. Like, I'm going to challenge, like, I'm going to challenge who? Like, I'm going to challenge Richard Dawkins, let's say, or Ben Shapiro. I challenge Ben Shapiro to a debate, and I'm going to offer him $10 million. $10 million to debate Ben Shapiro. And if he doesn't accept that $10 million, that just proves what a grifter he is. What a cowardly grifter. He won't confront me. And I don't actually have $10 million. Like, so you're getting mileage off of that dollar amount that you're challenging, but that's mileage that you don't deserve because you don't actually have that money. You have to beg for people to fund that money that you're putting up. Anyway, this is like low class kind of move to make, but unfortunately, Andrew Wilson's followers are so stupid that they're coughing up the money for him to be humiliated by Candace Owens. So, why was moderation more necessary, and why is Patrick Bet-David such a failure that he can't moderate this debate? Like, the whole point of this debate should have been a deep dive on the evidence for either side, okay? For Tyler Robinson being the killer, and that narrative, the government narrative, the prosecution's narrative, versus the holes in that narrative, the problems, like the evidence that contradicts that narrative. It should have been a careful, deep dive, step by step. Let's look at this. Let's have a discussion about the rifle, about the caliber of the round. Let's talk about the ballistics of the round. Let's talk about the autopsy report. Let's talk about the timeline of like where Tyler Robinson was on that day. Let's talk about the surveillance footage. Step by step, going through all of those details and bringing up like screenshots, pictures, video. That's the kind of structured debate that would have been very informative. It would be very interesting. And that's the kind of stuff that Candace actually does on her show. Okay, she analyzes and she goes through evidence and she talks about it. And the whole goal of Andrew bringing the overwhelming evidence of Tyler Robinson's guilt is, okay, present that. Present what that evidence actually is and have Candace respond and let the audience decide. That would be a very informative, interesting clash between two sides. But that didn't happen. And it's not because of Candace. Candace was willing and more than competent in her ability to have that kind of debate, that kind of structured debate. But Andrew Wilson either didn't want that, he didn't do anything that was conducive to that. Okay, all of the clips and material that he brought were not actually directly relevant to Tyler Robinson. It was just ad hominem attacking Candace Owens' credibility, saying that, oh, you claim that, Erica Kirk is somehow involved, and that's Erica Kirk. So, like, bringing clips and trying to get gotcha moments of Candace Owens. So it seems like Andrew Wilson was not wanting to have that kind of structured debate. And Patrick Bet-David obviously is too incompetent to facilitate that kind of debate. And this is a larger problem, actually, with what's happening with online debate. And as someone who has been involved with online debate on social media for a better part of a decade now, I'm very concerned about the direction of online debate and what online debate has devolved into. And the problem is TikTok. Okay, the problem is TikTok. The problem is short form content. Because what all these debates turn into, or the whole purpose of these debates, is just clip farming. People are going into debates just for the purpose of clip farming, so they can get a clip, they can create a short to put on Reels or TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. And in order to clip farm, the less structured the debate is, the more potential you have for clip farming. And the more potential you have, because clip farming involves what? Like a clip of you like getting the gotcha on your opponent, getting the gotcha, humiliating your opponent, getting the clip of your opponent stuttering, okay, and then you mocking the stutter. Okay, that's a clip. Oh, I humiliated the opponent because look at this 30-second clip where I pose a question, the opponent stutters, and then I mock them stuttering. That's a clip. That'll get a couple of million views. Okay, that'll show how superior my position is to the opponent. So that's what these debates have become about. It's not about a structured argument. Which argument is better? Can you respond to the opponent's logical claims and provide counter arguments or point out where their argument is flawed? That kind of engagement requires structure. It requires, clear delineation of speaking time. They don't want that, okay? So these people, okay, this new crop of debaters that have become famous over the past 2 or 3 years, including Andrew Wilson, for example, including like God Logic, including some of these Muslim debaters, actually. They don't want structured debate. They want a, mud wrestling match. They want a no-holds-barred shouting match. That's what generates the clips that they can use to go viral on these platforms that prioritize, the algorithm prioritizes the short form content, the 30-second clips. And so that's, I mentioned the whole frustration that I had trying to get this Christian debater, God Logic, to agree to a formal structured debate. He doesn't want that. He doesn't want that. He wants it to be a shouting match because that's what generates the clips. And especially for people like God Logic or Andrew Wilson, that they're not particularly intelligent, they're not particularly well informed beyond like very specific like argument chain that they've memorized. They're not very, they don't have the capability to think on their feet and to adapt to an argument. Like they need to have the room to, in these debates, to overtalk, to use mockery, to use rhetorical skills to get the clip and to farm that. And then they also rely on their audience, their online audience, to basically raid the comments and the live chat and to say, oh, he's destroying him. Oh, ha, ha, ha. Even in the physical events, even in the actual in-person events, they bring in their people to fill the audience and to sit in the front row to heckle their opponents. That's part of their strategy, and that's part of the clipping. Like that goes into the clips, or to like in the Q&A section, for example. So this is, I'm done with participating in this. Like, this is not actually interesting. It is not. This is like a devolution of online debate. Okay, online debate. If you look at like the online or any of these like religious debates or political debate, they're very structured. Like, look at an Ahmed Didat debate, Zakir Naik debate. Look at like on the Christian side, like a William Lane Craig debate, like the big debates with Sam Harris, for example, or Christopher Hitchens. Like, they're very structured. You have designated speaking time. You have designated rebuttals. Like, there's a lot of concern for what is the argument, what is the rebuttal. And yeah, there's rhetoric involved. There are rhetorical strategies involved. That's a big part of debate. But it's not like the entire thing. Like, it's not 90%, 95%. Like, it's a part. Like, it's the garnish. It's not the main thing, the main course. So anyway, so this whole Candace Owens Andrew Wilson debate, like, that's part of the reason why it's ultimately unsatisfying for someone who cares to what is the truth of the matter. Like, they didn't have a systematic discussion of the evidence. It was just a matter of like over talking, trying to get the gotcha moment, etc. Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to talk more about this Candace Owens debate, but I want to share with you a tweet. Because I want to get into more of the substance of the case of Charlie Kirk's assassination. And I tweeted about this. Okay, so I tweeted about this. I said, Charlie Kirk demonized Muslims and cheered on the genocide of Palestinians, all in service of his Zionist masters. Regardless of who actually killed him, it's so satisfying watching his death be instrumentalized to attack Israel and Zionist power. This is why I support Candace. Okay, I tweeted this yesterday. Okay, and I said, to be clear, I also 100% believe that Israel killed him. So this guy, Nick Matau, who I debated, okay, the guy who thinks that there are 6 million hadith, he is pointing out, as if this is contradictory. Okay, so on the one hand, you think that Charlie Kirk was a devoted slave of Israel, like a devoted slave serving his Zionist masters, but you also think that Israel killed him. Isn't that a contradiction? Isn't that a contradiction? Why would they kill their slave? Why would they kill their devoted servant in Charlie Kirk, you idiot, you retarded Muslim? This is what Nick is saying. And then you have this other Nick, okay, Pablo Fuentberg, as Nico calls him, saying LOL. Okay, co-signing this. Oh, these retarded Muslims, he says, as he brushes off the roaches from his shoulders. Okay, the cockroaches crawling all over him. He takes a break to write LOL. Okay, because this is supposed to be like such a gotcha. Okay, it's so clear. Like, you idiot. You think that Charlie Kirk is devoted to Israel and then they killed him for that? How does that make sense, moron? How does that make sense? And it's supposed to be like, so, like, that's basically their opposition to Candace, actually, is maybe like over 50% based off of this kind of inference. Okay, this kind of inference that why, like, it's so clear that this is a leftist. It's so clear that there's a leftist. There's this Tyler Robinson, okay, this skinny little guy, okay, in his 20s with a trans girlfriend who is so angry at Charlie Kirk. It's so obvious that he's the killer. Like, it's so plausible. What's implausible is thinking that Israel or there be any kind of Zionist-involved conspiracy to kill Charlie Kirk. That's ridiculous, because Charlie Kirk was such a devoted servant of Israel, promoting Zionist interests, okay, against Palestine, against Iran. It's so obvious. Retards. Okay, so what's my response to this? Okay, to these people. First of all, like, when has being an ally of Israel and like a slave of Israel, when has that guaranteed anyone's safety? Okay, Israel is constantly attacking the US. Israel is constantly sabotaging the US. Israel is the country that has the most foreign spies in the United States. Is who? It's Israel. But isn't the US the biggest supporter and benefactor of Israel? So you're telling me, wait. So you're telling me that the United States is the biggest benefactor and supporter of Israel, literally propping up the Zionist state for its entire history, yet Israel is going to bite the hand that feeds them. Israel is going to undermine the U.S. whenever they want, whenever the U.S. interests conflict with their own. They're willing to spy on the U.S., to sabotage the U.S., to take actions that are going to harm the U.S., drag the U.S. in a war that's going to ultimately destroy the U.S. against Iran, for example. Israel is willing to do that to its greatest ally, to its greatest benefactor and supporter? Yeah, that's the thing. Like, these people, like someone like Fuentes, who claims to, understand Judaism so well, understand Jewish power and Jewish influence in the state of Israel. He understands it so well. But he doesn't understand, like, that the fact that Israel has a long history up until the present of counteracting, sabotaging, and yes, even killing, assassinating its greatest allies whenever they become inconvenient. As soon as they become inconvenient, or for whatever greater purpose, they have had no problem throwing their greatest allies under the bus. Why would Charlie Kirk be any different? Why would Donald Trump be any different? Okay, they destroyed Donald Trump's presidency. Donald Trump, in his first term, was one of the most servile presidents to Zionist interests that Israel had seen in a long time. Okay? Arguably the most servile in his first term. Did they reward Donald Trump in any way, or did they just double down in pushing him for more? Okay, we want you to attack Iran. We want you to attack and destroy Iran and do regime change in Iran. It's going to destroy your presidency. It's most likely going to destroy the US. We don't care. We don't care. Just do it, slave. Just do it, goy. But no, but they couldn't ever like conspire to take out Charlie Kirk. So why would Israel want to take out Charlie Kirk? And I've already discussed this. And I've explained this in previous episodes of Haqiqatjou. Okay, Charlie Kirk was crossing major red lines as far as the Zionists were concerned. The Zionists were enraged with Charlie Kirk. The biggest donors, the biggest Jewish donors for Turning Point USA, his organization, were pulling out. They're pulling out their millions of dollars, saying that we're not going to support you. You're basically Hamas. And that's the kind of perspective that they have on Charlie Kirk. Why? Because he was platforming Tucker Carlson. He was platforming Candace Owens. That's a step too far. You've crossed the line. That's unacceptable. He refused to denounce Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. He refused that. This is a major violation, okay? This is a major violation, and clearly they wanted to punish him for this. They wanted to punish him for this. And then beyond that, he also had expressed all of this kind of anti-war sentiment. He was not in favor of all-out war with Iran. The max that he was willing to support up to that point was limited strikes. And he even conditioned. He said, I'm willing to support these conditional strikes back in summer of 2025 on these nuclear facilities of Iran. But we're not going to have boots on the ground. We're not going to have a forever war with Iran. That would be bad. That would be wrong. Like, he had primed his audience with that kind of aversion to attacking Iran and going into all-out war with Iran. This is a liability. This is a liability if you want, like at that time, okay, this is back in summer of 2025, Israel had plans, Netanyahu had plans for all-out regime change war with Iran. Dragging the U.S. into that war. That was their plans. Trump, okay, obviously the donkey that's going to carry out these plans, and Charlie Kirk is a liability. Charlie Kirk is a liability for that. So there are many reasons to get rid of this liability. Okay, and it's especially sensitive because Israel views his organization, TPUSA, that has this kind of influence across college campuses, they view that as the future of their support in the United States, are the young conservatives. We cannot lose the young conservatives, the young Christians. And Charlie Kirk is who could potentially make that go the wrong way. And he's signaling with his refusal to condemn Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, with his platforming, his active platforming of those figures, he is giving us strong signals that he is going to be a problem for us. So they took him out. And again, this is pattern recognition. This is not low IQ. This is just basic pattern recognition. Which country has demonstrated their willingness to take out Americans, even at scale, to engage in espionage, to engage in sabotage, to engage in assassinations in the U.S.? And this is something that Fuentes claims to be an expert on. He claims to be an expert on. He claims to know the history. Who was involved in 9/11? Which countries, if you want to say, which countries were involved with 9/11? With the JFK assassination, to name just a couple. Okay? Which country has shown over and over again that they're willing to take out these high-ranking political figures or even politicians? Who has demonstrated that over and over and over again? So this idea, this like very retarded idea that, because the assumption, okay, like normal people who are normal, have a normal psychology. Like if I show you a lot of generosity, I help you, I support you, a normal person is going to reciprocate that. You're going to help me. You're going to support me. You're going to protect me. That's how people normally behave. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. But that's not the normal psychology of Israel and these Zionists. They don't have that psychology. They have more of the psychology of like a narcissist. Okay? And if you understand narcissist psychology, for a narcissist, the more that you submit to them, the more that you support them, the more that you help them, the more that they feel they're entitled to your help. They actually develop more of a negative opinion of you. In fact, their disgust for you increases. They view you as more subservient and more beneath them. That is the psychology of a narcissist. That is the psychology of the chosen people. By the very concept of chosen people is this. It's theological narcissism. The more you serve them, the more entitled they feel to your service, and the more enraged they are when you deviate from their commands. The more angry they are, and the more they want to make an example of you, to punish you, the more that you serve them. And then you think that you have an independent thought, Charlie Kirk? Oh, you're not on board with a full American invasion of Iran? You're not on board with that? Suddenly you have a backbone? Suddenly you have your own independent thoughts? Suddenly, you go on Patrick Bet David and you say that Israel had foreknowledge of the October 7th attacks, and you share that conspiracy theory on these big platforms, Charlie Kirk? Like, did we give you permission for that? Who do you think owns you, Charlie Kirk? And then you're not willing to condemn Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens? In fact, you're platforming them? This is not going to fly. In fact, we're enraged by this. Okay, and they expressed that rage to Charlie Kirk himself, and that's why he messaged Candace Owens and others, saying that he's worried. He's worried for his life from Israel, from these Zionists. So that's the psychology that you have to understand, and either Fuentes is too ignorant to understand this, okay, or he does understand it, but he's compromised. Okay, he's compromised. He was forced to make a deal to go after Candace Owens, to use his following to undermine the case against these conspiracy theories. And so he's compromised, or he's just ignorant. But that's the way that narcissists, theological narcissism, the chosen people syndrome, like that's their mentality. The more that you serve them, the more they actually despise you, the lesser that they actually think of you, the less respect that they have for you, and the more angry they are with you if you go contrary to their wishes and their commands. So that's something that we have to understand. Like this is so critical for understanding Zionism, actually, and the way that the relationship between Israel and the US. Okay, and that's why it's so humiliating and pathetic that the US continues to serve Israel and Zionism, and continues to allow these people to run this humiliation ritual. Okay, that's why it's so disgusting, because do you know, like me speaking right now to the average American, do you know how much these people hate and despise you, despite taking billions, if not trillions of dollars, sucked it out of your economy from your tax dollars, sucked it out for their country, for their healthcare, for their educational system, for their infrastructure, for their economy, for their security? How much money that they've sucked out of you for free. And that has, every dollar has only increased their hatred for you. Okay, their hatred and their disgust for you. Okay, you're worth less than nothing in their eyes. They have more respect for Iran, actually. They have more respect for Iran that's resisting them. Okay, they have more respect for Hamas that's resisting them than they have for Americans, than they have for Charlie Kirk. Now, understand that. Okay, they hate Iran. They hate all the Goyim, but they especially hate the Goyim that are serving them, that are servile to them, to this state. So just understand that. Like, this is something that I don't think people appreciate. And the same goes for the Arab countries, by the way, like the Arab countries that are, signed on to the Abraham Accords, like the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco. Like, they also are seen as filth, scum by the Israelis themselves. So it's like an extended humiliation ritual. Okay, so back to the Candace Owens case. Oh, but one more point about Charlie Kirk, okay? One more broad observation about Charlie Kirk, okay? And pattern recognition. Okay. We now live like the assumption that the US government wants us to accept, and Andrew Wilson wants us to accept, Nick Fuentes wants us to accept, is that suddenly we live in a world where high-ranking right-wing conservative politicians are suddenly in imminent danger of being assassinated at will by these leftists. Like, these leftists are so crafty and they're so capable. Okay, even the ones who have no kind of background in, military training or even arms training or being skilled, in terms of being a sniper. Like, now, just any random leftist is eminently capable of taking kill shots at the highest ranking political figures in the United States, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's Charlie Kirk. They just go to an event, okay, get on at a high, the highest point nearby within 100, 200 yards, and it's a free-for-all. Just take the shot. That's the kind of world that we live in now. Isn't it crazy? That's what we have been. That's what they want us to believe. And this is supposed to be plausible. Okay, this is supposed to be a plausible narrative that we are all supposed to accept. Donald Trump, multiple times, there have been multiple attempts at his life, and one time they just grazed his ear, so close. Okay? Because Donald Trump is holding a rally, and within 200 yards, there's this barn, and the rooftop of the barn wasn't being guarded. Charlie Kirk, okay, he has this massive security detail, this team, okay? And the roof facing his podium, facing his tent on campus, is just open season. Anyone can go. Any sniper can go with grandpa's rifle and take a shot. Apparently, these massive gaps in security have now been discovered and are being exploited by these leftists. Like, how retarded do you have to believe to think that this is like a plausible narrative? Okay, that is far less plausible than the idea that Israel took out Charlie Kirk. It is far orders of magnitude less plausible that Israel took out Charlie Kirk than like some leftist loser, okay, got his family hunting rifle and went on the roof and took a shot, okay, and took out, this high-ranking, very important political figure. Meanwhile, his security is all around. And on a campus, okay, any of these campuses, and this is the other thing, like, these are the details that I was hoping that Candace Owens and Andrew Wilson would go into. Like, a campus has the best security cameras, 4K footage. Every inch of campus has these security cameras that are recording at the highest resolution possible. And yet there's not like any kind of clear footage of these things that supposedly took place. It's just all a blur. It's all a blur. It's all like grainy. Like, do you know, like, it's not difficult to understand like how security cameras work. You know that, right? Okay, now you have a Ring. Okay, a Ring camera, which is much lower grade than these security cameras, these commercial grade security cameras that are used at universities or other public places. Like, even a Ring camera is clearer, sharper, higher resolution than the type of video that we're being provided from campus on the day of the shooting. Isn't this like a huge hole in their narrative? Isn't this like a huge tell that something is not right? And this is the epistemological point that I want to make, or like the point that's very relevant to these types of debates. And what happened with Candace and Andrew is that Andrew is involved mainly in burden shifting. Okay? He wants to shift the burden on Candace. To say that, well, Candace, you have to prove to me and give me positive evidence that Tyler Robinson is a patsy. That Tyler Robinson was set up, that he's actually working with the government, or that he was set up to take the fall for this assassination. You have to give me positive evidence. This is a burden shifting move. Okay, shifting the burden so that Candace is put in a corner when she can't produce that kind of positive evidence that, okay, you lost the debate. And this is how, like, post-debate, this is how Andrew Wilson has been trying to frame this as a win for him. And obviously his retarded followers, they eat this right up. He wants to say, well, she provided no evidence. She provided no evidence that he's a patsy. Therefore, she lost. She lost. Objectively, she lost. Okay? But this is a complete misunderstanding of how these kinds of cases work. Because Candace Owens doesn't have to provide positive evidence of any other alternative. All that she is required to show is that the narrative provided by the government and the prosecution is so implausible because of holes and contradictions in their case that there's no way that they are honestly proposing this as what actually took place. You understand that? That is enough to show, to provide credence and plausibility that something fishy is going on. Something questionable is going on. Okay? So for example, my 3-year-old, okay? I walk into the living room and there's a vase. The vase is shattered, glasses everywhere. Okay? And I ask my 3-year-old, okay, standing guiltily looking at the shards, I asked my 3-year-old, did you break the vase? Did you push the vase off the table and shatter it? And my 3-year-old says, no, it was actually Muhammad, his older brother. It's like, oh, Muhammad did this. Okay. Meanwhile, Muhammad is not even in the house. Okay. Muhammad is in class. He's not even at house. He's like doing, martial art in his jiu-jitsu class or his wrestling class. Muhammad did this. So the implausible claim made by my 3-year-old is enough to first of all, give me a clue, like a major clue about who actually broke the vase. Okay. And secondly, that whatever my 3-year-old says, he's not an honest broker. He's not an honest narrator. He's not honest relayer of what actually happened. He can't be trusted. He's lying. Okay? That's in terms of human psychology and how we evaluate evidence, how we evaluate testimony, like that's the conclusion we would draw. Now, I don't need to have any positive evidence. Like, I don't need to do a fingerprint analysis. I don't need to have a video camera. I don't need to have positive evidence in the sense to demonstrate that it was actually him that pushed the vase off the table. Like, maybe there was a slight earthquake. Okay, maybe there was a slight earthquake, and that's what caused the vase to fall off the table. Like, maybe a bird flew in some kind of open window and knocked over the vase. There could be a million different possibilities. But I don't need any kind of positive evidence to prove any single one of those possibilities. That's not required. The testimony of the 3-year-old is so implausible that it raises these red flags. It makes it that it implicates him as being involved in some form or fashion. In the same way, the government narrative is so implausible, has so many of these holes, that it implicates them. It implicates that there is something else going on here that that you're not revealing. And I don't have to have any positive evidence beyond that. I don't have to say, no, this actually happened. This is the group that's responsible. Candace Owens is not required to do that. She just has to show that this case is so implausible, that the evidence is so contradictory, the supposedly overwhelming evidence to implicate Tyler Robinson is so unsatisfactory, that we should be highly suspicious. We should be highly suspicious of the narrative coming from the prosecution and these government sources, the FBI, should be highly suspicious of all this. And that's why Candace Owens has been so successful in making this kind of case, gathering an audience, like a strong following that supports her conclusions, because they have the same intuitions. These are rational intuitions that people have. And people like Fuentes or Steven Crowder, for example, Ben Shapiro, that trying to gaslight people, all of us, saying, no, this is low IQ. This is a low IQ conspiracy theory. Like, this is the standard script that is used against any kind of conspiracy theory. 9/11 was the same thing. With 9/11, like, people didn't have to bring positive evidence that Israel was involved, because at that time, the positive evidence wasn't actually disclosed. Okay, most people, it was like at the very beginning of social media and internet access, okay, in the early 2000s, like, it wasn't as easy to know about, like, the dancing Israelis, for example, and other facts that implicate, like, positive facts that implicate Israel. Like, that wasn't as well known, but was sufficient. It was sufficient to know that the government narrative about what happened on 9/11 was so implausible. That was enough to start doubting it. To doubt it and to start implicating, like, okay, the government must be involved with something. Like, they must have information that they're not disclosing. There must be more to it that they're hiding from the public, because there's so many holes in this story. And it's so implausible. Okay, you're telling me that this commercial jet was taken over by these terrorists who were able to fly these jets perfectly into these buildings, and then their passports, the actual commercial airliners were completely obliterated, such that there's no even scrap of metal that exists that withstood, like, survived the collisions, but their passports magically fell down, on the streets of Manhattan. And we're supposed to believe that this other airliner slammed, like, into the Pentagon, but there's not one single camera that recorded this. The most secure building, arguably, in the world, the Pentagon, is able to be attacked. Okay, there's no air defense that can prevent, like, someone taking a commercial jet and slamming it and destroying part of the Pentagon or the White House or any of these, like, Washington D.C. buildings. Like, the U.S. has no air defense for the Pentagon. And by the way, there's no footage. And when we look at the footage, the aftermath, there's no plane wreckage. We're supposed to believe this? And forget about, like, the actual World Trade Center buildings falling into their footprint at free fall, like the physics of that. World Trade Center 7, Building 7, collapsing because of office fires. Like, okay, people were bringing this stuff up, okay, and mentioning it. And I became a 9/11 truther in 2004. Okay, the fall of 2004. And it was because of Loose Change. Okay, I was telling this to Sneeko, actually. It was because of Loose Change, this documentary, okay, that was just amateur made, and pointing out, like, all of these flaws, all of these holes in the narrative. And I mistakenly thought that I watched this on YouTube, and Sneeko was the one who pointed out that, actually, Daniel, YouTube was launched in 2005, so there's no way that you could have watched it. And I was like, okay, you're right. It turns out I was watching on Google Video. Okay, do you remember Google Video? This was prior to YouTube. This was prior to YouTube, Google acquiring YouTube. Eventually, Google acquired YouTube, and they kind of retired their own video their own video platform, which was called Google Video. But I watched this on Google Video in 2004. I remember because I was in college. I just got into college, okay, in Boston at Harvard. And I watched this, and I was like, well, clearly there's something fishy going on. Clearly, like, this narrative that I've believed since 2001, okay, since I was in high school, clearly this can't be true. This can't be true. Like, this is completely implausible to believe this. At that time, I didn't know about Israeli involvement. I didn't know about these intelligence agencies. being involved. But I don't need to know that. Like, how could I have known that? How could anyone have known that unless you have the capability to do those kinds of investigations? Similarly, with the Charlie Kirk assassination case, a lot of details are going to come out in the future. Okay, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 20 years. Information that the government has in its possession now that they're not releasing. And that's the positive evidence that Andrew Wilson is asking about. Like, that positive evidence exists. It's not going to come out anytime soon, because the people who are controlling that evidence are the same people who are telling you that, like, you have a security detail that, like, a massive security team that doesn't think to secure the tallest, like, lookout point or observation point looking over your speaker, like your VIP that you're trying to protect. Like, that's the same entity that's trying to sell that nonsense to you is also going to hide and conceal and withhold, keep classified the evidence that contradicts, like all the positive evidence that completely contradicts that narrative. So it's going to be, it's going to be established. Like, it's going to be proven eventually. Like, all of these conspiracy theories, they turn out to be correct. Sometimes it takes less time, sometimes it takes more time. What did we tell you about COVID? Like, what did we tell you about Fauci? What did I tell you personally? Okay, we're not talking about a decade ago. We're talking about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, actually. Wow, it's time flies. 6 years ago. What was I telling you when they were telling you to mask up, 6 feet, 6 feet apart, get vaxxed, take the mRNA vaccine? Like, what was I telling you at that time? So it's pattern recognition. That's really what it is. Okay, it's actually high IQ. It's high IQ to be able to see patterns, and you come to conclusions where sometimes there's not actually positive evidence. Okay, human inference and human psychology, it actually goes beyond positive evidence. Okay, because there are certain things that you're able to intuit, not in the sense of vibes, okay, in terms of, like, your brain is able to process a lot of information and give you conclusions without you being conscious of all of the steps or all of the information that your brain has actually processed. This is something known in psychology, okay? Your brain is able to process more information without you necessarily being conscious of it. Okay, and some intuitions are based on that. It's actually, there is empirical evidence, and just because you're not conscious of that doesn't mean that your conclusions are not empirical or are not evidenced. Anyway, that's a bigger point about human epistemology and phenomenology. But yeah, it's actually high IQ. It's actually high IQ to conclude that Israel killed Charlie Kirk. It's low IQ to believe this government slop, this narrative of, oh, he was just a disgruntled leftist. He was just so mad that Charlie Kirk is against transgenders and his girlfriend is transgender. So he went to the roof on campus, okay, with all these, he's literally walking in front of these security cameras, okay, with his face uncovered. Like, this is what the prosecution claims, okay. It's walking in front, and he, took the shot, and then he jumped off of the roof, and then he went and he threw his rifle. He stuffed the rifle in his pants, and he threw it in the woods right by campus, and then he drove off. Yeah, that's high IQ. Oh, that's the high IQ. Why is it high IQ? Oh, because the government said. That's what the FBI concluded. Oh, and look, here's the rifle. It has his fingerprints. So, yeah, this is not high IQ. Anyway, yeah, why is it? Have you ever thought, like, why is it that all of these conspiracy theories turn out to be right? Why are the conspiracy theorists undefeated? Can you tell me that? Actually, it's pattern recognition. It's pattern recognition. So yeah, Candace Owens definitely won the debate, and you can tell like the body language was so hilarious. Like he's just twitching, like he was twitching. People noticed his foot like moving a mile a minute, like he's just like bouncing his foot on his knee. Okay, that's embarrassing. That's a tell that you're you're crapping your pants. But he has another tick. Like it was very distracting watching this debate because the camera like on Andrew Wilson is like it's capturing his face pretty close up, and every few seconds like he has this twitch, like he's just twitching like that. Did you notice that? Or like no one else was noticing that. He's like twitching his face like this. Just saw this. Do you see this slingshot? My kids left this here. This is dangerous, by the way. Slingshot. Maybe this was the weapon used. Anyway. But yeah, he's like twitching his foot, so it's like it's actually disgusting like looking at Andrew Wilson in this debate. Like maybe because he couldn't smoke, so he's going through nicotine withdrawal or something. But yeah, and then the gotcha, Candace Owens asks him to name a single charge. That was embarrassing. Couldn't like, did you prepare at all for this debate, Andrew Wilson? And the other thing that was also very embarrassing is Candace Owens pointing out that, look, it came out from the forensics that the fingerprints on the rifle, the murder weapon, allegedly, the fingerprints of Tyler Robinson were not actually the freshest fingerprints on that rifle. There were other fingerprints, and Tyler Robinson's were actually more degraded than the fingerprints of 5 other people or 4 other people on that rifle. Candace Owens points this out, like, this is significant. And Andrew Wilson says, so what? How is that relevant? He refused to understand the relevance of there being additional fingerprints on that rifle and Tyler Robinson's being more degraded than the other fingerprints on the rifle. He just refused to acknowledge the relevance of that. So you're dishonest. Like, you're dishonest or you're retarded. Like, these are the TikTok debate tactics. And that's why Andrew Wilson is like a weak debater. He has to just use rhetoric and mockery that appeals to his low IQ base. Like, he can't actually think on his feet. And when I debated him, like, that was demonstrated, like, in the first 5 minutes. Because if you remember, his whole argument was on the basis of cousin marriage and IQ. And I pointed out why this is a flawed argument. I gave like 5 reasons right off the bat, right off the top of my head. Like, this is such a flawed argument. First of all, like, your Bible and your church, they don't say cousin marriage is like prohibited. Like, that's not the position of the Bible, for one. Okay. And cousin marriage, especially on the Orthodox side, on the Eastern side, has been practiced. As you know, Orthodox people after the debate pointed out. Okay, so that's problem number 1. Here's problem number 2, 3, 4, 5. He could not compute, like, he could not understand that I had just rebutted his entire argument, showed how his argument is just not a valid or sound argument. He could not process that and adapt. And so the rest of the debate was about him like mocking Muslims, mocking Muslims are dumb, Muslims are low IQ, etc. Like, that's all he could do for the rest of the debate, just on the basis of rhetoric. So the same thing happened in this with Candace Owens, and she humiliated him. And then also the really big point that Candace made that he also didn't seem to understand is that Candace pointed out that all the overwhelming evidence that you're pointing out in this debate, Andrew Wilson, is based on like pretrial depositions. And these pretrial depositions, like the evidence that is allowed and the testimony that is allowed, it can just be hearsay. It can just be on the basis of, oh, I heard this and this is what I thought based on what someone else told me. Usually in trial, like, hearsay is not acceptable. You can't just say, oh, well, I heard this from someone. Like, oh, I just heard from someone that the suspect was here or this person was here. Like, you can't use that kind of hearsay in trial as evidence. But with pretrial depositions and testimonies that are given, that is allowed. Like, they are collecting that type of evidence. And so if it's just based on hearsay, well, I, Candace Owens, have also gathered hearsay, gathered testimony where I've gone and talked to family members. I've gone and talked to restaurant owners that claim that Tyler Robinson was eating at their establishment. And this establishment is hundreds of miles away. And here's the receipt. Like, I also have that kind of evidence that is based on hearsay. So, Andrew Wilson, why are you accepting hearsay when it comes to these depositions, but you're not accepting, but my hearsay evidence is completely disqualified by you? This is inconsistent. So, Candace Owens continuously made this point on this inconsistency, and Andrew Wilson couldn't even engage with that because he couldn't understand it. He couldn't understand what she's saying in order to respond. So yeah, it's a complete disaster for Wilson, and he's been doing damage control for since last week, since the debate. So yeah, it was a clear win, and the only people who are supporting Wilson are the Zionists and the Feds, basically. They're the only ones who think that he won this debate. Okay, guys, that is my commentary. We've had over 2 hours of Haqiqatjou today. Let's look at your super chats. Mesa says, don't be fooled, people. This alliance was formed with Israel's approval and is directed against Iran. Alliances are always formed against someone, and in this case, that someone is Iran. Interesting perspective. Any books for learning Islam academically? What do you mean academically? Like at a university? Like, I don't recommend you learn Islam academically, like in terms of academic works on Islam. Let's see. The Real Salafia says, off topic, what's the difference between 12 imams and prophets? The difference is that imams don't get revelation. They don't get revelation, so they're not prophets, according to Shiism. Okay, that's according to Shiis. The 12 imams are not prophets because they're not getting revelation. That's the big difference, and there's others. Abdullah says, I've seen the meltdown in the comments section of Lily J replies you give. LOL. Any more clarification on the matter? Is Genius of Islam episode 4 still a thing? Shukran. Yes, Genius of Islam episode 4 is a thing. Inshallah. Still on the docket, on the plan. Lily J replies, yeah, I was going to talk about Lily J, but other issues came up. Maybe we'll have an episode dedicated to that. But I'll comment on Lily J. So she had a tweet or a post on X that said, a Christian relative passed away. And, maybe I should just bring it up. Okay, but basically she was like praying for this Christian relative, or saying that the Christian relative is going to be in Jannah or is going to be saved, etc. And I pointed out that, well, this is kufr. I said that, look, it was surprise, surprise. Lily J, Okay, she was going strong on the feminism nonsense, and now she is tweeting about like all religions are a valid path to salvation. This kind of kufr. Okay, Lily J responded to that. Lily J was not happy. Okay, she said, "When did I ever say this?" Like, and yes, Islam is the best feminism. Islam is the best feminism. And so I responded to that as well. She also had some commentary like, "Oh, it's of course Islam is the best feminism because Islam requires men to support their wives," and just these other kinds of ridiculous statements. So with Lily J, like the overall perspective that I have is that it's just bizarre that this person, okay, and it's like a pattern that we're increasingly seeing. The nature of social media, you have people that are converts to Islam and they develop a following. Okay, Muslims are excited. Oh, a new Muslim, and they want to support that. That's a natural instinct that Muslims have. Great, but they're giving like a lot of popularity to some of these figures that are just recently Muslim, just 2 or 3 years. And then these figures, they after a while, like they start saying nonsense. They start saying ridiculous things about Islam. They start talking authoritatively about Islam. Like, look how indignant Lily J is. She thinks like, did someone make you sheikh? Like, did someone like give you a title of sheikha or something, ustaza? Like, why are you speaking so definitively on what Islam is or is not, what is or is not haram or kufr or whatever? So because what she says is so ridiculous. Like, what do you mean? Like, oh, your Christian friend or Christian family member died, so oh, you hope that they're gonna be saved. Like, you know that this is not Islamically correct, and in fact, it falls into kufr. Okay, falls into kufr to think that someone dies upon Christianity, denies Islam, dies upon Christianity, and is going to be saved. This is not a valid belief in Islam. In fact, it is contrary to Islam. Anyway, like these people, like they think that there's some kind of authority. Okay, and I'm not saying that you have to be a sheikh or a sheikha to participate on social media or to do dawah or whatever. But if you're going to take like a position that's contrary to basic Islamic orthodoxy, you're going to get criticism for that. And don't be indignant when you get that criticism. Don't get offended or think that you're like entitled to anything. So this is how Lily J is acting, like very entitled. Another one of these people is Junior. Okay, this clown, this fasiq. Disgusting. Like, if you don't know who he is, good. You don't need to know who he is. But he's on X, and he's constantly like lying, like spreading misinformation. Like he puts out videos and he claims that they're something that they're not. And it got so bad that X demonetized him. Okay, demonetized. Apparently, he was making thousands of dollars a month by pushing out this slop. Okay, and misinformation, but it got so bad that X demonetized him. And so Junior had this disgusting display of groveling, begging for his monetization to be returned. And he's groveling to this Jewish Zionist head of product development at X, okay, who's under Elon Musk, groveling. Like, so the DMs, this Nikita, okay, published the DMs of Junior begging, please, I'll take down my posts. Just please reinstate me into the monetization program, please. Okay. And this Junior claims to be like a Palestinian. I'm starting to doubt that he's actually Palestinian. I think that's just a grift that he's been using to generate followers and to generate sympathy. But now he's promoting gambling. Okay, by the way, this guy has takfired me. Junior has said I'm a kafir. Why? Because I said that, like, he had a tweet. Again, this is a good example of his engagement farming, rage baiting kind of post. He said, this Ramadan, this was his post. This Ramadan, if you're a non-Muslim, you do not dare eat in front of me. I do not accept anyone eating in front of me while I'm fasting. Okay, non-Muslims? like basically making this kind of belligerent, aggressive threat against non-Muslims. Like in Ramadan, you better not eat in front of me. Like, so this is rage bait. Okay, this is a rage bait. He's trying to get people to react to his post angrily. And so this is very irresponsible. So I point out, like, this is crazy, irresponsible rage bait. Like, you are harming Muslims by making it seem like Muslims have a problem with people eating around them. Pointed out, like, I fast and, you know, my children are eating in front of me. Okay, or at that time of the month, my wife is eating in front of me. She's not fasting. That doesn't cause me to, you know, be angry, or this is not some kind of violation. Like, people can eat in front of you while you're fasting, and every Muslim who lives in non-Muslim countries have no problem fasting while others are eating in front of them. So why is this junior fake Palestinian claiming that, oh, you better not, like, this is a violation, how dare you eat in front of me in Ramadan? This is irresponsible. Like, you're generating hate against Muslims, and then for that, like, he takfired me. I'm not a Muslim. Okay, you get retard. Oh, I mean fasiq, sorry. Fasiq, retard. Whoops, that slipped. So this is Junior. This is Junior. Anyway. So yeah, this is these influencers that are coming out and saying that they're Muslim, they're Palestinian, or they're new converts, and then suddenly they're authorities on Islam. And that's the thing with Lily J also, like the whole fundraising controversy, and she's using AI in these videos. Feeding children in Africa, it turns out to be AI. Feeding children in Palestine, it turns out to be AI. Like, yeah, that's very problematic. But at the end of the day, until there's like financial disclosure, we can't really know if she misappropriated any funds. But we don't have to wait for that kind of information. We can just look at what she says. Like, look at what she says, what she promotes, and it's contrary to Islam. She's violating Islamic principles, and she's unapologetic about that. Like, I was criticizing her. She was like doing a cutesy little video about going and praying in the mosque, and she's like wearing yoga pants, like no hijab, yoga pants, going to the masjid. Like, and you have all these, and I'm saying, like, this is disrespectful to Islam. This is majorly disrespectful. This is like making a mockery of Islam, making a mockery of the prayer. And all her simps are in the comments raging at me, like, okay, you idiots, you retards. Simps are just the worst. Like, simps are the ones who empower this kind of behavior from Lily J. Like, if it weren't for these simps, like, she would be nothing. But instead, she's like, has all this following, spreading all this nonsense. It's because of simps, okay? Simps are the problem. Hello, Zoomer. How's it going, bro? Thoughts on the USS Abraham Lincoln conditions? Yeah, it's funny. It's quite funny, actually. The U.S. can't support its troops. Okay, the troops, the naval officers on the aircraft carrier are basically living in filth. Their toilets are overflowing. They don't have much clean water. The food looks disgusting, like this kind of stale food. Like, the rations are really minimal. So, yeah, very sad for the U.S. Armed Forces, the U.S. military. Like, this is the collapse. Like, you're watching it in real time. And the reason is that the U.S. Abraham Lincoln has to be stationed in the Arabian Sea, basically. They can't even get too close to the Persian Gulf because Iran will hit it. There's evidence that it has been hit already, that Iran has been able to strike some of these aircraft carriers, including the Lincoln. But you have these reports of, self-harm and even offing themselves, like soldiers, like offing themselves, because the situation is so bad, the conditions are so bad, because this ship, this aircraft carrier, can't resupply itself because the Bahraini naval base has been obliterated by Iran. So there's no port that this aircraft carrier can safely go to in that region. So this is why the supplies are running thin. The morale is at all-time low. So now this is being reported, and it's showing that the U.S. military has been defeated by Iran. Like that's the overall takeaway, and it's gonna get worse and worse. Like, and it's not only because of Iran; it's because of the industrial capacity, like the capacity to actually um, build these military ships, to build like any kind of even ammunition, military ammunition, missiles, whatever it may be. Like the capacity of the U.S. has been so degraded, and part of it is due to deindustrialization that's happened in this country. A lot of offshoring, a lot of outsourcing, and the U.S. just doesn't have the capacity to sustain like this kind of massive global military anymore. So this is going to be increasingly common. Iran is just accelerating that process. Like Iran is just accelerating the fall of the U.S. empire, and the conditions on the USS Abraham Lincoln is a microcosm of the state of the United States as a whole. Like if you look at the U.S., the infrastructure is crumbling. There is, massive depression. Suicide rates are increasing. Antidepressant use is increasing. Like all the signs of a falling empire. Economic situation is spiraling. The cost of gasoline, the petrol, is now increasingly like $4 a gallon, and it's going up, quickly going up. Price of groceries, like people can't afford to live. Like basic cost of living is out of reach for a larger and larger segment of the American population. So like we're living, like people in America are living on the USS Abraham Lincoln. Like that's the reality for the whole country. So you can thank Iran, but ultimately you can thank Israel. Like just like the Abraham Lincoln wouldn't be in the situation that it's in today if it weren't for Israel dragging the U.S. to war. The country as a whole economically wouldn't be in the position that it's in if it weren't for Israel dragging the U.S. into all these endless wars in the Middle East, especially after 9/11. Ibi Kushi says they plan in Iran and Allah plans. Allah is the best planner. Do you think, Haqiqatjou says, do you think the physical sciences behind the Industrial Revolution were inevitable? Or could they only emerge under a materialist worldview? Like, was the Industrial Revolution inevitable? The physical sciences behind the Industrial Revolution were inevitable. Like, wasn't the materialist worldview also behind the Industrial Revolution? Like, I don't understand your question. Like, the physical sciences do require a materialist worldview. I do believe in that. Thank you, Parviz, for your super chat. Jermungunder, is there possibility in your opinion that Candace's controlled opposition like Fuentes is? Why do they allow her to speak on any platform? Well, I mean, she's gotten to a point where she's too big to fail. Like she's too big for them to take her off any platform. So yeah, controlled opposition, I don't know. Like what is she like? What kind of conclusion is she preventing people from reaching? Like if we go with the assumption that Israel is behind, like Israel is puppeteering the political space in the United States and the media, political media space, the news space, they're puppeteering all of that. And so they control the Tucker Carlson, the Candace Owens, the Steven Crowders, the Nick Fuentes. All of these different media channels are being controlled by Israeli interests. Isn't Candace Owens like bring all kinds of pressure and negative scrutiny to Israel? Like if she's controlled opposition, like she's doing a terrible job, like distracting from Israel or deflecting attention away from Israel. Halal Zoomer asked, thoughts on these women supporting Lindsay Clancy? Yeah, this is a crazy case. Crazy case of this woman in Massachusetts who she killed her 3 children, strangled them to death. She attempted to off herself after doing it by throwing herself from the 2nd-story window of her house. And she ended up losing function of her legs, so she's in a wheelchair. And so she's confessed to killing them. And the courts are just trying to decide whether they should charge her with the murder, so she'll get life in prison, or like she should get some kind of leeway because of insanity, like she was insane. And that's what her defense is arguing, is that yeah, she killed the kids, but it's not totally her fault because she was insane. And they claim that she was suffering from postpartum depression, and she was being medicated, and these drugs were making her depression worse, and they drove her into a psychosis, and that's why she killed her kids. And so there's been this rise in support for this woman with all of these mostly liberal, mostly white women who are supporting her, saying that, you know, she's innocent. She didn't actually do it. She didn't actually kill her kids. It was her husband. Her husband actually killed the kids. And so they're having like protests. It's like and they're making videos in support, like TikTok reels and whatever in support of her. Like, no, it's actually, she's innocent. Release her, free her. And they've raised money. They've raised like hundreds of thousands of dollars for this woman who murdered her kids. So this is like shocking. Like this shows the extent of the kind of feminist delusion and how women can never be monsters. Women are always innocent little flowers. They have no accountability. Even when women are killing their own children, like murdering literally babies, they're still innocent. Like women are still innocent and pure, and they can't be held accountable. Like this is like the extreme of that logic, like the extreme conclusion of that kind of mindset. And it's very disturbing. It's very disturbing. And you have some of these like women who are coming out and saying, yeah, I'm depressed too. Like I have postpartum depression too. And they're like screaming into the camera, like completely unhinged. And these are mothers, like they have children who are like, call Child Protective Services. Like these women are not, it's not safe to leave children with these women. So they're like screaming and the shouting. And it's true. Like so many of the women in the West are insane. Like they are insane because of psychological problems due to the condition in which people live. They have to go on antidepressants, and the antidepressants make it worse. They're all on birth control, okay? Birth control, which has devastating consequences on your hormones as a woman. And this is why I recommend, like, if you are married, do not let your wife use birth control. Do not allow your wife to be on birth control. This is very harmful, dangerous drug. Okay? And, you know, I'm not against contraception. Like, find some other contraception that's not going to destroy the hormones of your wife and her psychology, potentially her mental state. Get off the birth control, please. I'm begging Muslims Get off of birth control. Do not allow, like, if you care about your family, care about your wife, do not let her get on these drugs. So, but yeah, the women have gone insane. And I was reflecting that 10 years ago, there was a case of a Muslim woman who killed her 2 children. They're older. I think they're like 8 and 10 years old, or 12 and 10 years old. She killed her 2 sons, and then she killed herself. And this was a hijabi Muslim woman. I think it was Virginia. She was like very wealthy family. Like they're living in a big mansion, pretty much like a big house. And she was very active in the Muslim community. Okay, she was at these conferences like ICNA conference. Okay, ISNA, like at these conferences, she was giving talks. She was like facilitating. Okay, and like doing the whole women's empowerment shtick, you know, community activism shtick, like with the Dawa Mafia. And she, you know, this was a high profile case. She murdered her 2 sons. And immediately what happened? Like everyone, all the Muslim community, especially in America, started simping for her. Like, oh, she had some mental issues, and maybe her husband was abusive. Maybe her husband was mistreating her. Like, just preventing any kind of accountability or negative scrutiny. Like, oh, if you say that she's a murderer, then that means you're a misogynist, that you hate women. People were attacking me because I was talking about like this disgusting murderess, okay, killing her own children. This is, if a man had done this, okay, we would have rightfully condemned him, okay, expressed our disgust, expressed our hatred for that kind of behavior. We would have said, but when it comes to, if it's a woman, okay, a Muslim woman hijabi who kills the kids, then, oh, we have a mental health crisis. Oh, you know, maybe it was her husband who abused her. Like the same kind of narrative is being pushed by these feminists when it comes to this Lindsay Clancy. So this is part of the gynocentric delusion that has become so common and is being revived, like hardcore revival of this kind of feminism. We thought it was dead. We thought woke was dead. You had like AOC and Mamdani like condemning or like disavowing woke, and people think that, oh, it's over. No, it's being revived. Like this kind of feminist attitude is getting stronger. It's affecting the Muslim community as well. That's why we have to double down. I have to double down on this, on debunking feminism and counter signaling the simps. AKI says Ataturk is still being worshipped in Turkey. The army is still very secular. You think that a secular nation will free Palestine? Yeah, I mean, there's problems, obviously. There's problems, and that's part of the reason why I think it's limited, like what we can expect from Turkey in this Mecca pact. Hello, Zoomer says, thoughts on Israel threatening Turkey lately? Netanyahu just held an emergency security meeting on the topic of Turkey. Yeah, so people will point out that Turkey is being threatened by Israel. It was Netanyahu, obviously, who was having these meetings. You have Israeli commentators saying that Turkey is the new Iran. As if they were able to get rid of Iran. Like, Iran is still alive and well. They're, like, doing well, actually. So you don't need a new Iran. You're still dealing with the old Iran. But Turkey, yeah, they view Turkey as a regional threat, and they had airstrikes against Turkish installations in Syria, some of these northern bases in Syria where there was a Turkish troop presence, and there was actual bombing that took place, okay, earlier this week. So Israel is getting increasingly aggressive with Turkey. And I think this is just to push, like, I think what's actually going on is like they're trying to push Turkey to just be more dependent on the U.S. to try to rein Israel in. And that's the kind of game that Israel and the U.S. play. It's a good cop, bad cop strategy. Israel acts extra belligerent, okay, against Syria. Israel acts extra belligerent towards, any of these Gulf states. And the U.S. comes in and don't worry, we're gonna restrain Israel. We're gonna make sure Israel is on its best behavior. Oh yeah, they did a wrong thing, but we're gonna protect you. Don't worry. Like, it's a good cop, bad cop dynamic that they run. They kind of spam this strategy. So maybe that's what's going on here with the latest strikes on Turkey. And I really doubt. I don't think Turkey has any appetite for a hot conflict with Israel. But yeah, the optimistic view is that Turkey wants to have insurance by allying with Saudi and Pakistan. But we'll see what that actually amounts to. Muslim Boogeyman says, hey, if Kirk's totally grieving widow is willing to forgive the perpetrator, then who are we? What's worse is the anti-Semitism. Yeah, so that's what Erica Kirk said. She totally forgives Tyler Robinson for killing her husband, but she can never forgive Candace Owens for her anti-Semitism. Yeah, normal person, like, when they see this, when they see like a spectacle of Erica Kirk like dancing around on stage, okay, and like taking over Turning Point USA and becoming a boss babe, CEO of this massive multi-million-dollar organization, and she's dancing on stage and fundraising and turning her husband's death into a spectacle rather than like grieving with her children as like the typical housewife that you would expect that Charlie claimed he was married to. That raises red flags. That raises red flags. That raises suspicions. And it's gaslighting to say that, no, she's just grieving differently. She's just grieving differently. And, like, this is just gaslighting. Or make nothing of this. Make nothing of the fact that she's so desperate to prove that it was actually Tyler Robinson who killed her husband, and that Israel couldn't have been involved, and that she's on this crusade for anti-Semitism. Like, make nothing of that. Make nothing of that. You're low IQ if you become suspicious with that behavior. Like, this is just gaslighting. MMA guy says, what was the criticism about Khabib earlier? Someone in their super chat was saying that Khabib is silent on the UAE, or the UAE's involvement in the Sudanese genocide. Captain Caliphate says, Dan lost because he was too anti-you-know-who for progressives. This is about Dan Bilzerian in the Florida primaries, Republican primaries. Wasn't getting the boomers, obviously, and most minorities, Muslims included, wouldn't vote because they lean left. This left only young white nationalists. Yeah, so Dan Bilzerian, he was running in the Republican primary for one congressional district in Florida, and he lost to Randy Fine, this rabid Zionist who is constantly threatening Muslims, laughing at dead Palestinians. He's, really disgusting individual. And he's in Congress, backed by Trump, backed by the GOP, the Zionist-owned GOP. And Dan Bilzerian ran against him in this primary race. And the election concluded on Tuesday, and Dan lost. He pointed out that there seemed to be some kind of cheating going on because some of the reported vote totals that he had were lost. Okay, or were reversed. And so he claims that there might have been cheating that happened, or that there was cheating happened. I think that's plausible. I think that the electoral system in the US is compromised. I think it can be hacked. I think it can be electronically hacked. I think since there's such a reliance on mail-in ballots as well, like, that's something that can influence many of these races that are happening. And the upcoming midterms as well. So anyone who like says that, oh no, the electoral process in America is perfectly sound and protected and secure, like, you're delusional. Like, you're delusional, and this is more of like a testament of your faith in this, as opposed to any kind of empirical fact. Like, there's so many vulnerabilities that can be exploited in the electoral counting system. Okay, and you think that people like these powers and these interest groups are not exploiting those vulnerabilities? Of course they are. Of course they are. It would be naive and low IQ to think otherwise. But anyway, putting that aside, Dan Bilzerian, he loses. He gets almost 20% of the vote. What's his face? Randy Fine gets over 50%. And so this kind of analysis that, well, no one is going to vote for Dan Bilzerian, I think he proved a lot of people wrong. People were saying, like, his haters, including like these Groypers, Nick Fuentes people, were saying that, oh, Dan Bilzerian, oh, he's not doing anything. He's not doing any kind of campaigning. No events. There's been no events in his district. Like, how is Dan Bilzerian going to win? He's just such an idiot. Yeah, but he was second place. Okay, he was second place. It was a crowded primary race, and he won almost 20% of the vote. So if he was doing nothing and he was able to win 20%, and he's like basically the only candidate that we see that is explicitly campaigning on this end Jewish supremacy platform. Like, he is anti-Israel. He's saying that we need to go to war. The U.S. needs to go to war with Israel. We need to kick out the dual citizens, and we need to end Jewish supremacy. Like, that's his explicit platform. You can go to his campaign website, and he has 8 platform points, okay, that he's campaigning on, and one of them is end Jewish supremacy. So you can go read that. And he's winning 20%. Nearly 20% of the vote, and there are these kinds of irregularities as well. So this has got to be freaking out the Zionists right now, because you can't just say that he's a kook and no one's going to vote for this, and oh, Dan Bilzerian is only popular online, and that's not going to translate to any kind of actual electoral win. 20% is significant. 1 in 5. It's 1 in 5. And you're saying that he wasn't actually doing anything. He wasn't actually doing anything. That actually is in his favor. Like, he was able to win 1 in 5 votes against an incumbent. By the way, the incumbent, Randy Fine, backed by Donald Trump and the entire GOP in his state and even nationally. And this is like a heavily Jewish district in Florida. And he's getting 1 in 5 votes for Dan Bilzerian. That's got to freak them the hell out, okay? That Dan was able to accomplish this. So it's a huge win. It's a huge win for Dan Bilzerian. The other kind of candidate, the dark horse candidate for the governor's race in the primary in Florida, was with this Fishback guy, okay? Fishback. And a lot of people were promoting him at first. Nico was even promoting him at first. Never, like, looks like a fraud to me. He looked like a fraud. He looked very fishy, okay, to me from the beginning. I never, like, had any kind of positive endorsement of him, because he just seems fake. He seems fake, and he seems unhinged. And there's a clip going around where he's in a Jubilee debate, and it turns out he was a rabid Zionist. And if you look at his platform, like, he's just about the memes, okay? This Fishback, he's just like a meme candidate. And, so, you know, he got the backing of people like Fuentes and the Groypers. And what was the result? He got only 10% of the votes for governor. Only 10%. So, and he was campaigning the whole, like, much longer than Dan Bilzerian was campaigning, and was doing a lot of events, and he was only able to get 10%. So how is that a success? How is that a success, but Dan Bilzerian is a failure? This is just the Groypers coping with their humiliating loss. Like, we've been hearing, okay, there's all these news articles coming out, okay, about Groyper influence. Oh, Washington, D.C., half of the young Republicans in Washington, D.C. are secretly Groypers. They're secretly fans of Nick Fuentes. Oh, he's gone so viral. Oh, this is a generational run. Like, all of this hype for Nick Fuentes. Okay, but turns out it doesn't actually translate to any kind of electoral win. Isn't that the conclusion that we have to draw? according to Fuentes himself, according to Nick Fuentes himself, who says that, what matters is actually the ballot box. What matters is actually the political pull. Who cares about how many likes you get on X or Instagram? It's actually about winning these elections and having influence on the ground. Okay, if you have like 50% of Washington, young Washington Republicans in your pocket on your side, how's that not translating to anything tangible that we can detect? It's only these news stories, like these kinds of reports that are being published without any actual hard evidence or hard data. It's just rumors. That seems like it's controlled opposition at its essence, really. Armanla says, hello, Daniel. I'd like to get a minor in philosophy and want to obliterate all the ideologies, academically improve Islam. What books should I read? If you want a minor in philosophy, I mean, the minor will dictate what books you're reading, right? The classes that you take, the courses that you enroll in order to achieve the minor in philosophy, like they're going to assign you the reading. But if you want like books that I recommend, like I have a recommended reading list on MuslimSkeptic.com that you can go check out. But I mean, the number one book that I recommend, like if you want to argue against like the Western ideological or intellectual history of the West, like you want to be able to critique that at a very deep level, you got to read, you have to have some kind of reading in the history of science and the philosophy of science. And the best entry into that is to read Thomas Kuhn, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. You got to read that. You have to have some kind of reading in psychology and moral psychology. So I recommend reading Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. Okay. Righteous Mind, that's another good book. Very important for understanding moral psychology and the way that human beings understand right and wrong. It's actually devastating if you understand the implications of that for Western philosophy, like Western moral philosophy, which is used to criticize Islam, by the way. And then another thing that I would highly recommend, also in terms of psychology, is to read The Weirdest People in the World by I'm blanking. The Weirdest People in the World by Joseph Heinrich. So read those 3 books. That's a good start. If you want to read more like proper analytic philosophy, my favorite book, I've mentioned it before, is Philosophical Investigations by Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein has a very influential book, Philosophical Investigations. It's going to be hard for you to understand that. But if you're going to do a minor in philosophy, then you might want to take classes that have to do with ordinary language philosophy. And Wittgenstein is related to that. But that's also like an internal critique of Western philosophy, actually. But it might be hard to understand. It's definitely not for beginners. So that's why I recommend. Thank you, Brother Muhammad, for your super chat. I think this is Barakallahu Feek. Hard to read. I think that's what it says. Allah Yarbarak Feek. Appreciate it, bro. Okay, guys, that's our show. Any other comments? I'll just look at the general chat right now. As usual, a lot of side conversations flooding the chat. Fishback only got 8%. I thought it was 10%, but Ali Dawa says you have no right to speak on Lily because you're a shirk apologist. Is that retard still talking? Like Ali Dawa is like not only a Wahhabi, but he's like, I think he's literally retarded. Like I'm not even joking. Like I think his IQ is under 100. Like he has double digit IQ. And and he's a simp. Like he's the biggest simp ever. Like why is Ali Dawa coming to simp for Lily J? I'm a shirk apologist. Oh, I'm a shirk apologist, Ali Dawa. Why don't you respond to the video that I made? Like showing your hypocrisy and how you're a two-faced freak. Like, how about you respond to that, Ali Dawa? Instead of simping for Lily J, like you're a clown. Like this is what Ali Dawa does. He simps for people who have popularity. Okay, he like comes to the defense of Lily J. He comes to the defense of Mufti Menk. He comes to the defense of I don't know who. Okay, as long as they're popular, as long as he can gain clout from that. Big Mooj says, on reading blogging theology seems interested in Nietzsche. His points seem juvenile, but I haven't read his actual work. Yeah, Nietzsche is a good writer. Like if you read Nietzsche, he's like a very good writer. Like he writes in a way that's fun to read. But his ideas, like they're not that they're not like mind-blowing ideas like the will to power or the Ubermensch or the idea of God is dead. I mean that's a good point, like the idea that God is dead. Okay, he says God is dead, like that's what I mean, like it's rhetorical, like it catches your attention. Like Nietzsche would have been great on social media, okay, because he knows like to get attention, like he knows how to rage bait. But what does it actually mean? It means like, okay, all of our systems of knowledge and our morality and the way that we structure society, like it assumes God. It assumes theology. It assumes the authority of religion and God's knowledge and grace and authority, etc. And now, post Enlightenment, God no longer has that function. Like religion no longer plays that function in human society and human knowledge, and therefore God is dead. Okay, it doesn't mean literally. So, no, this is it's a true point. It's a true point. Like, is it like the most mind blowing point ever? Like, I mean, his ideas about slave morality versus master morality, that's interesting. He hated Christianity because he thinks Christianity promotes slave morality. The idea that if you are weak and you are poor, you are meek, those are the most morally righteous people. in the mold of Jesus Christ. Okay, Jesus Christ in Christianity and Christian theology, he was a weak, impoverished man who was crucified. He was defeated, and this makes him, this is what adds to his authority. Like he sacrificed himself for the world. Like, this is slave morality. Like you win by losing. You win by being dominated, by being crucified. And this is a destructive morality according to Nietzsche. It's a destructive morality that was invented by who? Nietzsche says by the Jews. Like this is something coming from Judaism, and it affected Christianity. That's why he hated Christianity. He hated Judaism, because it's a slave morality. Like Jews, according to Nietzsche, okay, they're the lowest of the low, okay, low class. They're the dredges of society, and their morality props them up as the best, as the chosen, as morally superior to the non-Jew, to the Gentile. And this is like an inversion, because the correct kind of Western morality is that the good are the powerful, the good are the strong, the good are the beautiful, and the losers are bad, they're evil. They're at the bottom of morality. Like they should not be lionized or idealized, etc. So Nietzsche says that there's been an inversion of morality by Judaism and Christianity. So this is the genealogy of morals. I think that's the title of the book where he talks about this. Yeah, so Nietzsche liked Islam. Nietzsche said that like Islam is the opposite. Islam like values power and strength, and Islam is like a life-affirming religion. Nietzsche liked Islam. Like that's a fact, a historical fact that you may not have known. How to build reading habits and retain knowledge? Yeah, good question. I'd say just have a dedicated time for reading. Have a dedicated time for reading where you put away your phone, pick up a book, read, 10 pages a day. It becomes a habit. Go for a walk, go for a walk even in your house. Like go get some steps in, read something for 10 minutes. All right, guys. Appreciate all of your super chats, everyone's comments. Thank you for tuning in. And that was our show. I'll be back, inshallah, next week. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, subscribe to our newsletter. And we will be back with more Haqiqatjou. Okay, and hopefully I'll have more progress on my book and the editorial process for the book, inshallah. Yeah, so let me know what you think, whether it's the Mecca Pact. Are you more optimistic, more pessimistic? Do you agree? Let me know what you think about Charlie Kirk and Tyler Robinson, Candace Owens. Let me know what you think about Lily J, okay, and her sudden promotion of feminism and perennialism. And I do read the comments. So we will see you on the next episode of Haqiqatjou, inshallah. Till next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.